Absurdism. Absurdism is a philosophical concept that grapples with the conflict between humanity's deep desire for meaning and the universe's inherent lack of purpose. At its core, absurdism exposes the tension between our search for significance in life and the stark, indifferent reality of the universe, which offers no inherent answers. This realization can be jarring, an emotional shock that challenges the very foundation of how we perceive the world. In a world that often seems chaotic, unpredictable, and devoid of clear purpose, absurdism confronts us with the uncomfortable truth that, despite our best efforts, we may never find a definitive reason for our existence. At its heart, absurdism is most famously captured by Albert Camus, who argued that humans are caught in a never-ending cycle of asking existential questions only to receive no meaningful responses. This realization is often uncomfortable as it invites us to face the ultimate vulnerability of our existence, our futile search for meaning. Yet, paradoxically, absurdism also holds an unexpected freedom. By acknowledging that life is inherently meaningless, we are freed from the pressure to find a grand, universal purpose. The absurd, while unsettling, encourages individuals to create their own purpose, to define their own meaning, even if it exists in the fleeting moments of joy, love, and experience. Absurdism strips away the illusion of certainty, leaving us with raw, undeniable truths about the world. It forces us to confront the unsettling fact that meaning isn't something waiting to be found. It's something we must create in a universe that remains indifferent to our struggles. Aesthetic experience. Aesthetic experience is a deeply emotional and intellectual encounter with art, beauty, or nature that transcends ordinary perception. It's the moment when we are no longer just observers, but become fully immersed in the essence of what we're experiencing. Whether it's the rush of emotions that floods through you while standing in front of a painting, the stillness you feel while listening to a symphony, or the overwhelming beauty of a sunset, the aesthetic experience taps into something profoundly human, our capacity to be moved, to feel deeply, and to be transported to another realm beyond the everyday. In these moments, we engage with the world in a way that defies logic and purpose. We are not asking why we are moved or what practical value this moment serves. Instead, we are simply allowing ourselves to experience beauty for beauty's sake. This process of engagement doesn't just affect the mind, but also stirs something visceral within us. It's an emotional resonance, a deep connection to the work or scene in front of us. Aesthetic experiences are intensely personal, often evoking a wide range of emotions: awe, joy, wonder, or even sorrow. What makes the aesthetic experience so powerful is its ability to make us feel alive, to break through the monotony of routine and remind us of the richness of existence. In those fleeting moments, we come face to face with a part of ourselves that is often hidden beneath the layers of everyday life. The world around us becomes richer, more meaningful, and we find ourselves questioning what it truly means to experience life in its full vibrancy. Anti-Realism. Anti-Realism is a philosophical stance that challenges the existence of objective reality independent of our perceptions, thoughts, or linguistic frameworks. At its core, anti-realism suggests that what we know of the world is not a direct reflection of an objective, external reality, but rather a construct shaped by our minds, social contexts, or cultural frameworks. This radical rethinking of reality throws into question everything we believe to be true, everything we assume about the world, the things we can touch, see, and feel. The discomfort of anti-realism lies in the destabilization of what we consider truth. For centuries, we have been taught that truth is something external, something to be discovered and verified. But anti-realism forces us to confront the possibility that truth itself might not exist in any concrete or universally accessible form. Instead, it might be fluid, shaped by the limits of our perceptions, our social structures, or even our language. This can be a deeply unsettling realization, leaving us with the unnerving thought that the world we experience might not be real in the way we traditionally believe. Yet, anti-realism isn't necessarily nihilistic or pessimistic. It opens up new ways of thinking, new ways of questioning, and new ways of understanding the world. It forces us to reconsider everything from the objects we encounter to the very nature of knowledge itself. In rejecting the certainty of objective reality, anti-realism compels us to embrace the complexity and contingency of existence, where meaning becomes something constructed, not discovered, and reality becomes a shared, subjective experience. Applied ethics. Applied ethics is the practical branch of moral philosophy that takes ethical theories and applies them to real-world situations. Unlike abstract moral philosophy, which focuses on broad, theoretical questions about right and wrong, applied ethics is grounded in the messy, complex realities of human life. It concerns itself with questions that arise in various fields such as medicine, law, business, and technology, areas where moral dilemmas are not just hypothetical but impact people's lives in tangible ways. The challenge of applied ethics is not just about determining what is morally right, but also navigating the difficult, often conflicting demands of society, law, and personal values. When we think of applied ethics, we're confronted with issues that force us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature and the consequences of our decisions. For instance, should a doctor be allowed to euthanize a terminally ill patient? Is it morally acceptable for a company to collect vast amounts of personal data for profit? Should we prioritize individual freedoms or collective well-being in times of crisis? These are not theoretical debates. They are real challenges that affect people's lives, and they require thoughtful, often painful, deliberation. The emotional weight of applied ethics lies in its immediacy. It forces us to recognize that our choices have consequences on individuals, communities, and the environment. It forces us to reconcile our ideals with the complexities of the world. The discomfort comes from the recognition that no answer is ever truly simple. Every decision is a negotiation between competing values, and every choice we make can have profound implications that ripple through society. Art criticism. Art criticism is the practice of analyzing, interpreting, and evaluating works of art. It goes beyond merely appreciating the beauty or aesthetic appeal of a piece. It digs deeper into understanding the intentions behind the work, its cultural context, its emotional resonance, and its impact on both the artist and the audience. At its core, art criticism is an intellectual and emotional exploration that asks questions like, what does this artwork represent? What is the artist trying to communicate? How does this piece make us feel? And why? It challenges us to move past surface-level impressions and engage with art on a more profound level. The emotional weight of art criticism lies in its ability to open up new perspectives, to allow us to see a work of art not just for its visual qualities, but for its deeper, often complex meanings. Criticism can make us reflect on our own beliefs, values, and assumptions, often evoking strong reactions, whether that's admiration, frustration, or even discomfort. The process is deeply personal. Every critic brings their own experience, biases, and worldview into the evaluation, meaning that interpretations can vary widely. What one person sees as a profound statement on society, another might view as a shallow attempt at provocation. What makes art criticism so powerful is its ability to create dialogue between the artist, the artwork, and the audience. It fosters a space for conversation about cultural values, identity, politics, and the very nature of creativity itself. By engaging with art criticism, we are encouraged not only to consider art from multiple angles, but to experience it more fully. In this way, criticism helps to bridge the gap between passive viewing and active, thoughtful engagement, making art a mirror through which we reflect on our own lives and the world around us. Autonomy. Autonomy, at its heart, refers to the capacity for self-governance and self-determination. It is the ability to make decisions independently, free from external control or coercion. This concept is not just about the physical freedom to act, but about being mentally and emotionally equipped to choose your own path in life. Autonomy embodies the idea that each individual has the right to shape their own destiny, to follow their own values, and to make decisions that reflect their personal beliefs, desires, and goals. The emotional significance of autonomy runs deep. It's tied to our sense of self-worth and identity. When we exercise autonomy, we assert our individuality, rejecting the idea that we are mere products of our circumstances or the expectations of others. There's something deeply empowering about making choices that are entirely our own, especially when those choices reflect our truest desires and values. It's the essence of living authentically, which makes autonomy an essential component of personal freedom and self-expression. However, the pursuit of autonomy is not without its challenges. It often requires a balance between personal freedom and social responsibility. In a world that constantly places demands on us, whether from family, work, or society, it can be difficult to assert autonomy without guilt or fear of judgment. The tension between individual autonomy and collective well-being is a common struggle, yet this tension also highlights the importance of autonomy in maintaining our integrity, as it forces us to examine what it means to live according to our own principles, even when faced with societal pressures or external constraints. Ultimately, autonomy is not just about making decisions, it's about being the author of your own life, where your choices are truly yours. Being is one of the most fundamental and profound concepts in philosophy, but it's also one of the most elusive. At its core, being refers to existence itself, the state of simply being alive or being present in the world. It encompasses everything that exists, from the most tangible objects around us to the most abstract thoughts in our minds. The very idea of being challenges us to confront what it means to exist at all. What is the nature of existence? What does it mean to be rather than not be? And how does our understanding of our own being shape our understanding of everything else? The emotional intensity of exploring being lies in the way it forces us to confront the depth of our own existence. We are all born into this world without choosing to be, and yet we must grapple with the fact that we exist at all. The question of being is not just intellectual, it's deeply emotional. What is the meaning of our existence? How do we find purpose in a universe that seems indifferent to our struggles? These questions are existential in nature, and they stir something visceral in us. Philosophers like Martin Heidegger have spent their lives exploring the idea of being, particularly in the context of being with others and being toward death. These reflections encourage us to ask not just what it means to exist, but how we exist in relation to others, and how our awareness of our mortality shapes the way we live. Being is not static, it is dynamic, constantly evolving, and deeply tied to our awareness of ourselves in time, space, and in relation to the world around us. Biopolitics. Biopolitics is a concept that explores the intersection of politics and the biological aspects of human life. It refers to the ways in which governments and institutions regulate, manage, and control populations, not just through laws or policies, but through the very control of bodies and biological processes. This extends beyond traditional politics, reaching into areas like healthcare, reproduction, genetics, and even the management of death. The term popularized by philosopher Michel Foucault, highlights how power doesn't just operate through coercion or law enforcement, but through the regulation of life itself. Governments, in this view, don't merely govern land or resources, they govern the people's very existence, shaping the conditions under which we live, grow, and die. At the heart of biopolitics is the idea that the body becomes a central site of power. In modern societies, individuals' biological functions, such as birth rates, health, and mortality, are not just personal but political concerns. The management of public health, the regulation of medical practices, and even the control of what constitutes normal and abnormal bodies are all influenced by biopolitical forces. For instance, policies around reproduction, such as family planning or abortion laws, are deeply entwined with biopolitical control as they dictate the reproductive choices of individuals and the population's growth. The state's role in determining who has access to medical care or healthcare policies also speaks to this overarching control of life. Biopolitics can be deeply unsettling because it confronts us with the reality that our bodies, our most intimate and personal possessions, are not fully our own. They are subject to external forces that seek to regulate and manage us for social, political, or economic reasons. From vaccinations to laws regulating health practices, the ways in which political power extends into our biological reality reveal the far-reaching influence of biopolitical control. This recognition raises fundamental questions about freedom, autonomy, and the nature of individual rights in a world where even our biology is governed by larger social forces. Causality. Causality is one of the most fundamental concepts in both philosophy and science, referring to the relationship between cause and effect, the idea that every event or phenomenon is the result of a preceding cause. In simple terms, it's the way in which one thing leads to another, shaping the flow of events and experiences. But the power of causality goes far beyond a mere mechanical understanding of events. It influences how we perceive and interpret the world, guiding everything from our personal decisions to scientific discoveries. Causality is not just a framework for understanding the sequence of events, it's the lens through which we navigate reality. The emotional resonance of causality comes from its ability to shape our sense of control, responsibility, and even fate. When we look at the outcomes of our choices, both good and bad, we often wonder, what caused this? The search for causal links is a way of seeking meaning in our lives, of understanding how we arrived at our current circumstances. This need for understanding is inherent to human nature. We are constantly looking for causes, even in the most random or chaotic events, because knowing the cause gives us a sense of mastery over the world. But causality also introduces a deep sense of vulnerability and accountability. It raises unsettling questions. If every event has a cause, what is the role of free will? Are we merely the sum of our past experiences, shaped by external forces beyond our control? Causality forces us to confront the interconnectedness of the world, where every action can have far-reaching consequences. This can evoke a sense of power, but also the heavy responsibility that comes with understanding that our actions ripple through the fabric of existence. Collective identity. Collective identity refers to the shared sense of belonging and identification that a group of people feels based on common experiences, values, or characteristics. It is the idea that individuals see themselves not only as unique individuals, but also as part of a larger social group, whether it be based on nationality, ethnicity, religion, gender, or shared beliefs. This concept suggests that our identity is shaped not just by personal experiences and choices, but also by the collective narrative of the groups to which we belong. Collective identity binds individuals together, creating a sense of unity and common purpose. The emotional impact of collective identity is profound. as it provides a sense of connection and solidarity in a world that can often feel fragmented and isolating. For many, collective identity fosters pride, a deep sense of belonging, and even strength. Think of a person who identifies as part of a particular culture, community, or social movement. They often draw strength from the shared history, struggles, and aspirations of that group. In moments of crisis or celebration, collective identity offers a foundation of support, reinforcing the feeling that we are not alone, but part of something larger, something that transcends the individual. Yet, collective identity also comes with complexities and contradictions. While it fosters unity, it can also breed division, as groups may define themselves in opposition to others. The boundaries of collective identity can lead to exclusion, marginalization, and conflict when groups become insular or rigid in their definitions. In times of social change, collective identity is often in flux, as individuals navigate the tension between personal identity and group affiliation. Despite these challenges, collective identity remains a powerful force that shapes how we understand ourselves and our place in the world, influencing everything from political movements to cultural expression. Constructivism. Constructivism is a powerful philosophical theory that suggests that knowledge is not something we passively receive, but rather something we actively construct through our interactions with the world. This idea shakes up traditional ways of thinking about learning and knowledge. Instead of viewing knowledge as a fixed set of facts to be memorized, constructivism posits that each person builds their understanding based on their own experiences, prior knowledge, and cognitive processes. It's a deeply personal and subjective way of knowing, where learning is seen as an ongoing process of exploration, questioning, and interpretation. The emotional force of constructivism lies in its challenge to the way we traditionally think about education. In a world where we are often taught to accept facts and authority without questioning, constructivism encourages us to view knowledge as fluid, dynamic, and open to reinterpretation. It gives us the power to shape our understanding of the world, pushing us to become active participants in our learning rather than passive recipients. This shift can feel both liberating and overwhelming. On one hand, it places the responsibility of learning squarely on our shoulders, urging us to engage more deeply with what we encounter. On the other hand, it reminds us that there are no easy answers, just layers of meaning to be uncovered. For philosophers like Jean Piaget and Lev Vygotsky, constructivism challenges us to reconsider how we engage with the world and one another. It suggests that our understanding of reality is not objective or universal, but is shaped by the social, cultural, and psychological context we are immersed in. Through this lens, learning becomes an active, collaborative process, driven by curiosity and the ongoing construction of meaning. Contingency. Contingency is the philosophical idea that events, outcomes, and even existence itself are not predetermined or necessary, but rather occur due to specific conditions or circumstances. In a world defined by contingency, everything is subject to chance, uncertainty, and change. What happens is not inevitable, nor can it be predicted with absolute certainty. Instead, things unfold based on a complex web of interconnected factors that could have been otherwise. This concept challenges the illusion of fixed destiny or predetermined outcomes, emphasizing the fragility and unpredictability of life. At its core, contingency brings to light the delicate balance between possibility and impossibility. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that everything we know, our lives, the world around us, even the very fabric of the universe, could have been different. The universe, as contingency suggests, is full of paths not taken, actions not carried out, and decisions that could have led to an entirely different reality. This realization can evoke a profound sense of vulnerability, as we come to understand that we are not in control of everything. Our choices, while impactful, are just one part of a vast network of causes and effects. What makes Contingency emotionally compelling is its direct challenge to our desire for certainty. It shatters the illusion of a world where everything fits neatly into place, where every action leads to a predictable outcome. Instead, it invites us to embrace uncertainty and recognize that even in the face of unpredictable chaos, we still have agency and power over how we respond to the world. Life becomes not a straight path, but a complex, winding journey where every moment is shaped by the shifting tides of chance and circumstance. Cosmopolitanism. Cosmopolitanism is a philosophical and political ideology that emphasizes the idea of belonging to a global community, transcending national, ethnic, and cultural boundaries. It suggests that all human beings, regardless of where they are born, share common moral obligations to each other. In its most profound sense, cosmopolitanism urges us to see ourselves not just as citizens of our own country, but as global citizens who are interconnected with others across the world. This vision of a shared humanity is rooted in the belief that our collective well-being is more important than individual or national interests, and that the future of humanity is a shared responsibility. The emotional impact of cosmopolitanism is powerful, as it challenges our traditional notions of identity and belonging. It calls us to expand our empathy, to see beyond our local communities, and to recognize the common humanity that binds us all together. In a world that is often divided by borders, whether cultural, political, or geographical, cosmopolitanism invites us to embrace diversity, promote global justice, and seek peace through cooperation rather than conflict. It stirs a deep sense of moral duty, urging us to act in ways that promote human flourishing, not just for ourselves, but for others as well. However, cosmopolitanism also confronts us with difficult questions about how to reconcile global ideals with local realities. How do we balance our loyalty to our own community with our moral obligations to the wider world? The emotional tension here comes from the clash between the personal, the local, and the universal, forcing us to grapple with what it truly means to be human in a globalized society. Cosmopolitanism asks us to redefine our sense of self, not as isolated individuals, but as part of a larger, interconnected global family. Cultural relativism. Cultural relativism is the idea that the values, beliefs, and practices of a culture should be understood and evaluated based on that culture's own standards, rather than judged against the criteria of another culture. This concept challenges the assumption that there is a universal moral framework that applies to all human beings, regardless of their cultural backgrounds. Instead, cultural relativism emphasizes the importance of context in shaping how we perceive right and wrong. What is considered morally acceptable in one culture may be seen as unacceptable in another, and cultural relativism urges us to accept and understand these differences without imposing our own values. The emotional power of cultural relativism lies in its ability to provoke deep reflection on our own assumptions about morality and ethics. It forces us to confront the idea that our way of life, our values, and even our moral judgments may not be universally applicable. This realization can be uncomfortable, as it challenges the belief that our cultural norms are the right or superior ones. When we step back and acknowledge the diversity of human experiences, we may feel a mix of discomfort, humility, and even awe at how different people in different parts of the world create meaning, structure, and order in their lives. Yet, cultural relativism also presents difficult questions. While it encourages tolerance and understanding, it can also make it harder to critique practices that are harmful or oppressive, even if they are accepted within a specific culture. Practices such as discrimination, gender inequality, or human rights violations may be deeply ingrained in some cultures, and cultural relativism can leave us grappling with the moral dilemma of whether we should respect these practices or stand against them. The tension between cultural relativism and universal human rights is a key challenge, creating an emotional and intellectual tug-of-war that doesn't always have easy answers. Deconstruction. Deconstruction is a radical approach to understanding language, meaning, and text, famously developed by philosopher Jacques Derrida. At its core, deconstruction challenges the idea that language can represent reality in a straightforward, stable way. Instead, it reveals that meaning is always unstable, shifting, and dependent on context. In essence, deconstruction is about uncovering the hidden assumptions, contradictions, and hierarchies embedded in texts, whether they are written words, cultural norms, or societal beliefs. It suggests that meaning is never fully fixed, and that interpretation is always influenced by the reader's own context, history, and biases. What makes deconstruction emotionally triggering is the way it unravels the comfort of certainty. We are used to believing that words and concepts have clear, defined meanings, and that by interpreting a text or a message, we can uncover its intended truth. Deconstruction, however, shatters this belief. It forces us to confront the discomforting idea that meaning is not absolute, but always contingent, fragmented, and shifting. This realization can feel disorienting, even unsettling, as it challenges our basic understanding of how communication and knowledge work. At its heart, deconstruction is a critique of power. Derrida argued that text and language are often structured to support dominant ideologies, silencing or marginalizing alternative perspectives. By deconstructing these texts, we can expose the biases and power dynamics that shape our understanding of the world. This process of uncovering hidden meanings can be deeply transformative. It allows us to see the world in a more nuanced, complex way, understanding that what we perceive as truth is often shaped by historical, cultural, and linguistic forces beyond our control. Deconstruction invites us to embrace ambiguity and uncertainty, pushing us to rethink what we know and how we know it. Deflationism. Deflationism is a philosophical theory that challenges traditional views of truth, particularly the idea that truth is a deep, mysterious property of statements or beliefs. According to deflationism, the concept of truth is much simpler and less profound than traditionally thought. It suggests that to say a statement is true is merely to assert the statement itself, and that the term truth doesn't need any substantial explanation or metaphysical weight. In other words, saying it is true that snow is white is no different from simply saying snow is white. Truth, in this view, does not add anything beyond the statement itself. It is a tool for affirmation, not a grand, independent property. The emotional pull of deflationism is rooted in its radical simplicity. It tells us that the heavy, abstract baggage we often associate with the concept of truth, something that transcends language and guides our understanding of reality, can be discarded. Truth is not some deep, elusive entity. It's a straightforward linguistic tool we use to assert what is the case. In this view, there is no need to worry about the nature of truth, the existence of truth-bearers, or whether truth exists independently of our statements. Truth becomes something practical, unpretentious, and ordinary. Deflationism is disorienting in its stark contrast to traditional theories that treat truth as a fundamental aspect of our understanding of the world. It questions the need for elaborate theories and grand narratives about the nature of truth, leaving us to consider a simpler, more humble approach. This perspective shifts the focus from deep, metaphysical exploration to a more pragmatic understanding of language and meaning, suggesting that our pursuit of truth may not be as complex as we've been led to believe. In the end, deflationism forces us to reevaluate how we think about reality itself. Dialectic. Dialectic is a method of reasoning and philosophical inquiry. Inquiry that seeks to understand truth through the resolution of contradictions, rooted in the works of ancient thinkers like Socrates and further developed by figures such as Hegel and Marx. Dialectic involves a process of dialogue between opposing ideas or forces, rather than accepting one view as final or absolute. Dialectic emphasizes the dynamic interaction between conflicting perspectives, where the tension between them leads to a higher understanding or synthesis. This method, often described as a conversation between ideas, is not just about finding simple resolutions. It's about understanding the deeper truths that emerge from the conflict itself. The emotional core of dialectic lies in its challenge to comfort and certainty. It forces us to confront contradictions, not as obstacles to be avoided, but as opportunities for growth and deeper understanding. Engaging in dialectical thinking often brings us face to face with discomfort, whether it's the clash between opposing political ideologies, personal beliefs, or ethical values. This intellectual tension can be unsettling, as it requires us to hold contradictory ideas in mind at the same time, forcing us to question our assumptions, refine our thoughts, and reconsider what we believe to be true. Yet, dialectic is not a futile exercise in conflict. It's a transformative process. Through the dialectical method, we can arrive at new insights, more nuanced positions, and even new ways of thinking altogether. It encourages us to see knowledge not as a fixed set of answers, but as a fluid, evolving journey, constantly shifting in response to the ongoing interplay of ideas. The beauty of dialectic is in its ability to make us uncomfortable, to challenge us, and to lead us to greater wisdom through the very contradictions we seek to resolve. Difference. Difference, in its most fundamental sense, refers to the variations between individuals, groups, or cultures. It is the concept that underscores the idea that no two people, societies, or experiences are identical. From physical traits like race and gender to ideological beliefs and cultural practices, difference is woven into the fabric of human existence. It's a term that resonates deeply because it challenges the assumptions of sameness, forcing us to confront the complexities of identity, society, and human interaction. Difference doesn't just describe what sets us apart, it shapes how we relate to each other and how we understand the world. The emotional impact of difference is both profound and often charged with tension. On one hand, difference can be a source of richness. Diversity in culture, thought, and expression brings a vibrancy to the human experience. Our differences can be celebrated for their beauty, offering new perspectives, innovation, and growth. When we embrace difference, we open ourselves to the possibility of greater understanding and connection, creating a tapestry of shared experiences that reflects the depth of human life. On the other hand, difference often evokes fear, prejudice, and even hostility. Our differences can lead to divisions, as people or groups seek to separate themselves from others who don't share their views, values, or characteristics. History has shown how difference has been used as a weapon to justify discrimination, inequality, and violence. The emotional challenge of difference is learning how to navigate this divide, how to acknowledge and respect diversity without allowing it to become a source of conflict or exclusion. Difference forces us to reckon with what it means to live in a world where not everyone thinks, looks, or believes the same. It asks us to question our assumptions, our prejudices, and the very way we interact with the world around us. The struggle to reconcile our individual identities with the collective diversity of the human race is an emotional journey, one that calls for openness, empathy, and the willingness to evolve. Discourse. Discourse refers to the ways in which language, communication, and knowledge shape our understanding of the world. It's more than just spoken or written words. It encompasses the systems of meaning, the power relations, and the social practices that govern how we speak, think, and interact. The concept of discourse challenges the idea that language is a neutral tool for transmitting information. Instead, it suggests that discourse is intricately tied to power, identity, and social structures. By examining the underlying systems of thought and language that structure our communication, we can uncover the assumptions, biases, and power dynamics that shape our beliefs and behaviors. The emotional power of discourse lies in its ability to control how we think and feel. The way we talk about issues, whether it's politics, gender, race, or morality, shapes our perceptions and reinforces certain societal norms. For example, the discourse surrounding race can influence how people of different ethnicities are viewed and treated. Similarly, the way we discuss mental health or economic inequality can either challenge or reinforce existing stereotypes and power imbalances. Discourse, in this sense, is not just about what is said, but how it is said, who gets to speak, and who is silenced. Foucault, one of the central figures in the study of discourse, argued that power is embedded in the very language we use. Discourse, according to him, is a mechanism through which power is exercised, not only by authorities, but also by everyday individuals and groups who shape and define the norms of society. By engaging critically with discourse, we can begin to see how language constructs reality and influences our actions, relationships, and identities. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that our understanding of the world is shaped not only by facts and reason, but by the dominant narratives and voices that prevail in our societies. Empiricism. Empiricism is the philosophical belief that knowledge arises primarily from sensory experience. According to this view, our understanding of the world is shaped by what we see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. It stands in contrast to rationalism, which holds that knowledge can be derived through reason alone, independent of sensory experience. Empiricism places the senses at the heart of our epistemology, suggesting that we can only know what we can experience directly or infer through observation and experimentation. The emotional weight of empiricism lies in its insistence on the tangible, the concrete, and the observable. It reminds us that our knowledge is rooted in the physical world, in the things we can interact with and perceive. This focus on the senses emphasizes a kind of grounded realism, pushing us to trust our lived experiences as the foundation of understanding. For empiricists like John Locke, George Berkeley, and David Hume, the mind is a blank slate at birth, and all ideas come from sensory input. Our experiences are what shape our concepts, beliefs, and ultimately our reality. Empiricism is compelling because it connects us directly to the world around us. It highlights the importance of observation and evidence, making it a guiding principle in the development of modern science. In this sense, it offers a sense of certainty in a world full of uncertainty. The methods of empiricism, testing, observing, experimenting, offer a way to uncover truths about the world in a systematic, repeatable manner. However, it also forces us to confront the limitations of our senses. What we experience is not always the full picture, and empiricism, while grounding us in the material world, also leaves room for questioning how much we can truly know from our limited perspectives. Existentialism. Existentialism is a philosophical movement that emphasizes individual freedom, choice, and the inherent meaninglessness of life. It centers on the premise that existence precedes essence, meaning we are born without a predetermined purpose, and it is up to each individual to define their own meaning in life. The existentialist confronts a world that seems indifferent or even hostile to human beings. where there is no grand universal plan guiding us. This radical freedom to shape our lives comes with a burden, the realization that we must navigate the world without the comforting certainty of divine or societal direction. The emotional core of existentialism is the profound sense of alienation and anxiety it brings. To recognize that we are alone in creating our purpose is both liberating and terrifying. There is a deep discomfort in knowing that without the anchor of external validation, our choices and actions become entirely our own responsibility. Figures like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus explored how this awareness of our own freedom can lead to feelings of dread, what existentialists often call the anguish of freedom. We are, in a sense, condemned to freedom, constantly facing the weight of decision-making in a universe that offers no intrinsic meaning. However, existentialism also offers an opportunity for authentic living. The very lack of predetermined meaning gives us the power to define ourselves through our actions, choices, and relationships. It invites us to embrace the chaos of existence, to confront our fears, and to live authentically, knowing that meaning is not handed to us, but created through our engagement with the world. Existentialism, while unsettling, challenges us to live fully, to take responsibility for our existence, and to create meaning in the face of an indifferent universe. False consciousness. False consciousness is a concept that arises from Marxist theory, describing the way in which individuals or groups in society may hold beliefs, ideologies, or perceptions that are contrary to their own best interests. Essentially, it's the idea that people can be misled into thinking that the system, the status quo, or the dominant ideologies of society serve them, even when they actually do not. This false sense of reality is often maintained through social, political, or economic systems that keep individuals from recognizing their own exploitation or oppression. It's a psychological mechanism that perpetuates inequality, keeping people unaware of the power dynamics that shape their lives. The emotional intensity of false consciousness lies in its insidiousness. It's the experience of being trapped in a reality where we don't even realize we're being manipulated or exploited. It's as if we're living in a dream, believing in ideals that don't serve us, like the idea that hard work always leads to success, or that the system is fair and just. Those under false consciousness might feel a sense of comfort in believing in these ideals because they offer hope and stability, but in doing so, they remain passive and accept their own subjugation. False consciousness can be deeply unsettling when we come to realize its grip on our lives. The emotional jolt of waking up to the realization that we've been led to believe in false ideals can be disorienting, even painful. It shatters the illusion of control and reveals the deep-seated inequalities that shape our society. Yet this moment of awakening is also a powerful one. It can be the first step towards self-awareness, resistance, and, ultimately, transformation. The struggle against false consciousness is a journey of reclaiming our awareness, understanding the forces that shape our thoughts, and striving to align our beliefs with our true interests. Feminist Epistemology. Feminist epistemology is a philosophical approach that examines the ways in which gender influences the production and validation of knowledge. It challenges traditional epistemological theories that have historically been shaped by male-dominated perspectives, arguing that knowledge is not a neutral or objective pursuit, but one that is influenced by power, social roles, and gendered experiences. Feminist epistemologists ask critical questions about who gets to produce knowledge, whose voices are heard, and how the biases inherent in societal structures affect what we consider to be true or valuable knowledge. At the heart of feminist epistemology is the recognition that traditional knowledge systems, often portrayed as objective and universal, have been deeply shaped by patriarchal values and norms. This realization is emotionally charged because it forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that many of the accepted truths we take for granted may be rooted in a historical and cultural bias that marginalizes women and other oppressed groups. By questioning the assumptions underlying traditional epistemologies, feminist epistemology seeks to uncover how gender, race, and class intersect to shape what we know and how we know it. Feminist epistemology also emphasizes the importance of lived experience in the production of knowledge, rather than dismissing personal, subjective experiences as unreliable. It argues that these experiences are valuable sources of insight and should be included in the process of knowledge creation. It encourages us to reconsider what counts as legitimate knowledge, bringing to light voices and perspectives that have often been silenced or ignored. This approach shifts the focus from abstract, detached reasoning to a more inclusive, relational understanding of knowledge that recognizes the role of social contexts, identities, and power dynamics in shaping our beliefs and understanding of the world. In its most transformative form, feminist epistemology not only challenges established ideas about what counts as knowledge, but it also calls for a more inclusive, equitable approach to learning and understanding the world, one that values diverse voices, experiences, and ways of knowing. It underscores the deep connection between knowledge and social justice, urging us to acknowledge and address the inequalities embedded within our systems of knowledge production. Functionalism. Functionalism is a philosophical theory that originated in the study of the mind and consciousness, but its influence has expanded into various domains like sociology, ethics, and even artificial intelligence. At its core, functionalism suggests that mental states, such as beliefs, desires, and experiences, should be understood by their role or function within a system, rather than by their internal composition or physical substrate. In other words, what matters is not what a mental state is made of, but what it does. This perspective emphasizes the idea that the mind functions like a machine, with each mental state playing a specific role in producing behavior and responses to stimuli. One of the most powerful aspects of functionalism is its flexibility. It allows for the possibility of different systems, biological or artificial, being capable of producing the same mental states as long as they perform the same function. This insight has had a profound impact on discussions about consciousness and artificial intelligence. If, theoretically, a machine could replicate the functions of the human brain, functionalists argue that the machine could possess mental states similar to human ones, raising tantalizing questions about the nature of mind and machine. The emotional significance of functionalism lies in its ability to bridge the gap between the physical and the mental. It provides a framework for understanding how abstract mental experiences can arise from the interaction of simpler physical processes. By focusing on the function rather than the substance, functionalism invites us to rethink the mind as a dynamic, ever-adapting system. It suggests that we are more than just the sum of our parts, that our mental states are determined not by what we are made of, but by the roles we play within the vast web of life. This can be both liberating and humbling, as it challenges the notion that consciousness is solely a product of human biology and opens the door to broader possibilities of mind and intelligence. Hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is the art and science of interpretation, particularly the interpretation of texts, symbols, and expressions in various forms, be it literature, law, religion, or even human actions. The word itself originates from the Greek god Hermes, the messenger of the gods, suggesting the act of translating or making something understandable. At its heart, hermeneutics is concerned with understanding how meaning is derived from texts or experiences, and how we can approach the complexities of communication that go beyond literal meaning. In its most profound form, hermeneutics isn't just about translating words, but uncovering the layers of context, history, and emotion that give deeper significance to what is being communicated. The emotional depth of hermeneutics lies in its focus on human connection. When we interpret a text or an experience, we are essentially engaging with the thoughts, emotions, and perspectives of another, whether they be an author from centuries ago, a person in a different culture, or even our own subconscious. The act of interpretation is a bridge that links us to others, helping us make sense of their world, their truths, and their struggles. Yet, it is often a challenging endeavor. The layers of meaning in a single text or event can be so deep and multifaceted that we may feel lost in the maze of interpretations. What makes hermeneutics emotionally compelling is its capacity to reveal the complexities of human communication. It makes us aware of how much of our understanding is shaped by our perspectives, biases, and cultural conditioning. Every interpretation we make is colored by our own experiences and knowledge, which means that meaning is never fixed or final. Instead, it is always in flux, constantly evolving as we bring new contexts, perspectives, and insights to the table. Hermeneutics challenges us to remain open to multiple interpretations, to understand that meaning is not always straightforward, and that understanding is an ongoing process of dialogue, one that connects us to the past, to others, and to ourselves in profound ways. Historical materialism. Historical materialism is a theory developed by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, positing that the economic base of society, its productive forces and relations of production, shapes the social, political, and ideological structures that exist within it. According to historical materialism, history is driven not by ideas, morality, or human consciousness alone, but by material conditions, the way people organize to produce the goods and services necessary for survival. The theory asserts that these material conditions determine the social order and the way in which societies evolve over time. From feudalism to capitalism to socialism, each stage in history is marked by shifts in the mode of production and class relations. The emotional pull of historical materialism lies in its revolutionary implications. It challenges the conventional narratives that focus on ideas or individual actions as the primary forces shaping history. Instead, it places the struggles between different social classes, those who own the means of production and those who do not, at the center of human development. This perspective can be jarring, as it forces us to confront the idea that our social systems, beliefs, and values are not the products of timeless truths, but rather the outcomes of specific material and economic conditions. What is striking about historical materialism is its focus on the role of class struggle in shaping society. It suggests that conflict is inevitable, as those with power will always seek to maintain their control over the means of production, while the oppressed will seek to challenge and change this order. This dynamic is not just a feature of past societies, but a continuing process with the potential for transformation and upheaval. The emotional charge of historical materialism comes from its call to action, its invitation to see the world not as fixed or eternal, but as a site of struggle, change, and the potential for revolutionary transformation. It forces us to see the historical forces at play in our everyday lives and encourages us to consider how we might contribute to reshaping the future. Hegemony. Hegemony refers to the dominance of one group over others, not through direct force or coercion, but by shaping and controlling the cultural, ideological, and social narratives that define society. It is the subtle yet powerful way in which a dominant group, often through institutions like media, education, and politics, maintains control by making their values, beliefs, and worldviews appear as natural, universal truths. This idea, popularized by the Italian Marxist theorist Antonio Gramsci, highlights that power isn't just held through political or economic force, but through the manipulation of ideologies and consent. The dominant group doesn't need to impose its will through violence. Instead, they create a system in which their power feels inevitable, unquestioned, and even desirable. The emotional intensity of hegemony lies in its invisibility. It's not the blatant power of a dictator or an authoritarian regime, but the quiet, pervasive influence that shapes our everyday thoughts, behaviors, and desires. Hegemony works on the level of cultural norms, social expectations, and values, convincing people that the existing social order is not only legitimate, but the only viable way of life. This creates a deep sense of passivity, making us believe that we are free even while our beliefs, choices, and opportunities are subtly constrained by the prevailing norms. The power of hegemony often resides in its ability to create a false consensus, convincing people to accept their subordinate position or to internalize dominant ideologies. For example, media portrayals of success, beauty, or wealth often uphold a narrow, idealized vision of life, shaping what we desire and strive for. Hegemony can be so pervasive that it's difficult to imagine any alternative, leaving people feeling powerless or even complicit in their own subjugation. Understanding hegemony forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the world around us. It challenges us to question the social norms and ideologies that shape our identities and societies. Hegemony is not just a political or economic issue, but a deeply cultural one, shaping how we perceive ourselves and our place in the world. Recognizing the existence of hegemony allows us to see beyond the surface of social structures, opening up the possibility of resistance and transformation. The emotional impact comes from realizing that true freedom may lie not in overthrowing the system, but in challenging the deeply ingrained beliefs that support it. Heideggerian Being. Heideggerian Being, a concept central to the philosophy of Martin Heidegger, explores the fundamental nature of existence and what it means to be. Heidegger sought to uncover the true nature of being, which he argued had been forgotten or overlooked by much of Western philosophy. For Heidegger, being is not just a static concept or an abstract idea. It is the dynamic, ever-present experience of existence itself. Unlike traditional metaphysical views that treat being as a set of properties or characteristics, Heidegger believed that the essence of being is found in the way humans engage with the world in their everyday lives, what he calls being in the world. This existential focus on being forces us to confront a profound question. What does it truly mean to exist, not in a theoretical sense, but in our lived experience? Heidegger argued that we, as human beings, are not detached observers of the world, but deeply intertwined with it. Our very existence is bound up with our surroundings, our relationships, and our experience of time. Heidegger's notion of being is not just about what exists, but about how we relate to what exists. We find meaning not through detached analysis, but through our practical engagement with the world, through the ways in which we experience and interpret our existence. The emotional resonance of Heideggerian being lies in its ability to stir a deep sense of awareness about our own existence. Heidegger invites us to reflect on the passing of time, our inevitable mortality, and the existential weight of our daily choices. This brings us face to face with the idea that much of our lives are shaped by what Heidegger calls inauthentic ways of being, living unconsciously, absorbed in everyday distractions. Yet, in understanding the essence of being, we are called to embrace an authentic way of existing, one that is more aware, more present, and more attuned to the fleeting nature of life. It is a deeply introspective and challenging concept, pushing us to reconsider our relationship with existence itself. Humanism. Humanism is a philosophical and ethical perspective that places human beings at the center of thought, morality, and value. It emphasizes the dignity, agency, and worth of individuals, arguing that humans are capable of self-realization and moral improvement through reason, creativity, and empathy. Rooted in the Renaissance, humanism advocates for a view of humanity that prioritizes the well-being of individuals and society over supernatural or religious explanations. It calls for a rational approach to life, encouraging humans to make decisions based on evidence, compassion, and shared human experiences rather than on divine authority or dogma. The emotional power of humanism lies in its hopeful vision of human potential. It challenges the darker aspects of existence, suffering, alienation, and the search for meaning, and instead focuses on the ability of humans to shape their own destinies through knowledge and action. Humanism fosters a belief in the possibility of progress, whether that's in the form of scientific discovery, social justice, or personal fulfillment. It inspires us to cultivate our own abilities, to seek knowledge, and to contribute positively to the world around us, all while recognizing our shared humanity with others. However, humanism also forces us to confront the responsibility that comes with this freedom. Without a divine blueprint for life, we are left to navigate our own moral and ethical paths. This creates a powerful sense of individual responsibility, urging us to live authentically and with integrity, to care for others, and to make choices that contribute to the common good. It also challenges us to grapple with the limitations of human knowledge and the vulnerability that comes with being fully human in an imperfect world. Humanism's enduring emotional appeal is found in its call to rise above despair and uncertainty and to embrace the possibilities of human agency and compassion. Idealism. Idealism is a philosophical view that asserts that reality is fundamentally mental, spiritual, or immaterial in nature. Rather than seeing the world as something that exists independently of our perceptions, idealism suggests that our minds, consciousness, or ideas shape and even constitute the world around us. At its core, idealism challenges the notion that physical objects exist solely in the material world. Instead, it argues that the nature of reality is tied to the mind or consciousness, emphasizing that our perception and understanding of the world are not mere reflections of external objects, but are actively constructed by our mental faculties. The emotional resonance of idealism is profound, as it offers a vision of the world that centers the mind as the source of meaning, beauty, and even existence itself. For those who adopt an idealistic view, the world is not a cold, detached, and indifferent place, but a deeply interconnected one shaped by thoughts, ideals, and consciousness. The belief that ideas have the power to shape reality can be incredibly empowering. It suggests that our thoughts, intentions, and imaginations are not simply reflections of an external, objective world. They are integral to the very fabric of what we experience as real. This idea invites individuals to feel a sense of agency and creative power over their lives and the world around them. However, idealism also presents a profound emotional challenge, particularly when it confronts the limits of human perception and understanding. If reality is so closely tied to consciousness, it raises questions about the authenticity of our experiences. How do we distinguish between what is real and what is merely a projection of our minds? The disorienting nature of idealism lies in the way it upends the certainty of the material world, leaving us to grapple with the notion that reality might be more subjective and elusive than we would like to believe. At its heart, idealism urges us to rethink the very nature of existence, forcing us to confront the boundaries between mind and matter, perception and truth. Identity politics. Identity politics is a framework that centers around the idea that social and political struggles should be organized and understood based on shared identities, such as race, gender, sexuality, ethnicity, and other group affiliations. It asserts that individuals' social identities shape their experiences of oppression, privilege, and power, and that these identities must be acknowledged and addressed in political and social movements. Identity politics emphasizes the unique challenges faced by marginalized and historically oppressed groups, advocating for their voices to be heard and their experiences to be recognized in societal and political discourse. The emotional force of identity politics lies in its ability to make visible the lived experiences of individuals who have long been excluded or silenced by mainstream societal norms. By elevating the importance of personal identity in the struggle for social justice, identity politics highlights the deep emotional pain of discrimination and inequality, often forcing society to confront uncomfortable truths about power dynamics. For marginalized communities, identity politics can offer a sense of empowerment and solidarity, as it allows individuals to come together based on shared struggles and common goals. It asserts that these identities are not just personal attributes, but central to the way individuals experience the world and navigate systems of oppression. However, identity politics is also controversial. Critics argue that it can fragment society by emphasizing differences rather than commonalities, potentially creating division rather than fostering unity. There is concern that focusing too much on identity may obscure larger structural issues that affect everyone, such as class inequality or economic injustice. Still, for many, identity politics represents a crucial tool for resistance, offering a way to challenge the systems that have long marginalized specific groups. The emotional intensity of identity politics arises from its raw confrontation with the realities of exclusion and the call for a more inclusive, just world. It demands that we recognize and address the power imbalances that shape the very fabric of our society, ultimately pushing us to rethink who belongs, who is valued, and who has the power to define what is considered normal. Immanence. Immanence is a philosophical concept that refers to the idea that the divine or the ultimate reality is inherent within the natural world, rather than transcendent or external to it. Unlike transcendence, which posits that the ultimate source of meaning, power, or divinity lies beyond the material world, immanence asserts that everything, from the smallest particle to the vastness of the cosmos, contains within it a deeper, intrinsic essence. This idea challenges the traditional divide between the sacred and the profane, the divine and the mundane, suggesting instead that the divine is everywhere, in everything, and that reality itself is imbued with a profound meaning that can be accessed through experience rather than seeking something beyond it. Immanence carries an emotional weight because it invites us to reconsider how we see the world and our place within it. It suggests that the answers to life's most profound questions aren't hidden in some distant, unreachable realm, but are woven into the very fabric of existence. For example, the spiritual significance of a tree, the beauty of a sunset, or the complexity of human relationships all reflect a deeper, divine presence that is part of the world itself. The feeling of awe and wonder that can arise in such moments is an emotional echo of this immanent reality. What makes immanence so compelling is the idea that we are never separated from the divine or the meaningful. It is always within reach, embedded in the world around us. This perspective can be deeply liberating, as it suggests that there is no need to search for truth or meaning outside of life itself. Everything we need to understand and connect with the ultimate essence of existence is already here, in the present moment, within us, and in the world we inhabit. Yet, it also challenges us to be more mindful, more attuned to the intricacies of life, as we are living amidst a universe that is, in its deepest sense, alive with meaning. Intersubjectivity. Intersubjectivity is the philosophical concept that highlights the shared understanding between individuals through mutual experiences, emotions, and perceptions. It refers to the way in which people connect and construct meaning through interaction, communication, and empathy. In essence, intersubjectivity suggests that reality is not just something we experience alone, but something we share with others. Through our relationships and dialogues with those around us, we create a common ground that allows us to understand each other, interpret the world, and negotiate meaning. It emphasizes that human understanding and communication are fundamentally social and relational. The emotional depth of intersubjectivity is felt in the way it illuminates human connection. It speaks to our need to feel understood and validated by others, to know that we are not isolated in our thoughts and feelings. It touches the core of what it means to be human, to be seen, heard, and empathized with. When we engage in meaningful conversations or share intimate moments with others, we are tapping into this shared space of intersubjectivity. It's the invisible thread that binds us together, creating a sense of solidarity in the midst of our differences. Yet, intersubjectivity also confronts us with the limitations of understanding. Even in the most intimate relationships, there are boundaries to how much we can truly know the other. Misunderstandings, differing perspectives, and cultural gaps can complicate the process of finding common ground. The emotional tension here lies in the fragility of communication, in the acknowledgement that while we strive for connection, there are always gaps between us, spaces where true mutual understanding can seem elusive. Nevertheless, the pursuit of intersubjectivity, our constant effort to connect, empathize, and share, is central to the richness of human experience, making our relationships and shared realities deeply meaningful. Knowledge construction. Knowledge construction is the process through which individuals or groups actively build, organize, and interpret information, creating meaning from their experiences, observations, and interactions with the world. It stands in contrast to the idea of knowledge being a mere passive reception of facts or truths. Instead, knowledge construction emphasizes the active role that humans play in making sense of the world around them, influenced by factors such as culture, language, personal experiences, and social context. It's the idea that our understanding of reality is not simply dictated by objective facts, but is shaped by the frameworks we use to interpret those facts. The emotional impact of knowledge construction lies in the realization that what we know is not static or universal. Our perceptions of truth, morality, and reality are deeply influenced by the lenses through which we view the world. This insight can be unsettling, as it challenges the idea that there are fixed, objective truths out there waiting to be discovered. Instead, knowledge becomes something fluid, negotiable, and subjective, shaped by the diverse influences that make up our individual and collective experiences. This creates a sense of uncertainty about what is true, but also a sense of liberation. Our understanding of the world is not something predetermined, but something we have the power to shape. However, this process is not without its challenges. The construction of knowledge can lead to misunderstandings, biases, and conflicts, especially when individuals or cultures construct knowledge in fundamentally different ways. The diversity of perspectives can lead to disagreement about what constitutes valid knowledge or truth. Despite these challenges, the process of knowledge construction is an essential part of human growth and progress. It encourages us to question, reflect, and continually reevaluate what we think we know. It pushes us to recognize that knowledge is not something to be passively consumed, but something we engage with, challenge, and redefine in an ever-changing world. Language games. Language games, a concept introduced by philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein, refer to the idea that the meaning of words is shaped by the specific context and social practices in which they are used. According to Wittgenstein, language is not a simple, direct system of naming objects or conveying facts. Rather, it functions through a complex web of social interactions, rules, and conventions. Each game is a set of activities, practices, or forms of life that shape how we understand and use language in particular contexts. The rules of these games are not fixed, but are determined by the social and cultural settings in which they arise. In this way, meaning is fluid, dependent on the particular ways in which language is used in various situations. The emotional impact of language games comes from the realization that language is not a straightforward tool for conveying objective truth, but a dynamic and evolving part of human interaction. Every conversation, debate, or discussion operates like a game with its own set of rules. When we use language, we are engaging in a type of social interaction where meaning is negotiated and constructed in real time. This challenges the traditional notion of language as a mirror of reality, suggesting instead that meaning is a product of human activities and cultural practices. The concept of language games makes us realize that understanding is deeply tied to context and social relationships. What one person means by a word or phrase may differ drastically from what another person intends, depending on their cultural background, personal experiences, or social roles. This dynamic can lead to misunderstandings or conflicts, but it also highlights the richness of human communication. In the game of language, there is no one correct meaning. Instead, meaning emerges through the rules we agree upon and the ways we interact with each other. This perspective encourages us to think more critically about how we use language, how we interpret others, and how language shapes our understanding of the world. Lived experience. Lived experience refers to the unique, subjective reality that each individual experiences in their day-to-day life. It encompasses the feelings, thoughts, and perceptions that shape our understanding of the world and ourselves, rather than being merely an objective list of facts or events. Lived experience is deeply personal, emotional, and grounded in the immediate, lived reality of our existence. It is the way in which we experience and interpret the world around us, the nuances of our relationships, the challenges we face, and the moments that resonate deeply within us. Lived experience is not just about what happens to us, but about how we make sense of those events on a deeply personal level. The concept of lived experience holds profound emotional significance as it acknowledges that each person's reality is shaped by their unique perspectives, backgrounds, and histories. Our lived experience is what gives us identity, purpose, and meaning, and it shapes how we relate to others and to the world at large. It is in our lived experience that we find the richness of life, the joy of connection, the pain of loss, the satisfaction of achievement, and the struggle of adversity. These moments, often fleeting yet powerful, become the fabric of our existence, influencing how we see ourselves and the world around us. What makes lived experience so compelling is its insistence on the value of subjective reality. It refuses to reduce people to abstract concepts or statistical data, instead embracing the complexity and depth of individual lives. In a world often dominated by objective measurements and generalized narratives, lived experience reminds us that truth is not just something external to us, but something felt, experienced, and understood in deeply personal ways. It is through this lens that we come to know who we truly are and how we navigate the world with all its emotional highs and lows. Materialism. Materialism is a philosophical view that asserts that the physical world is the only reality, and that everything, including thoughts, consciousness, and emotions, arises from material interactions, in contrast to idealist philosophies that argue that reality is fundamentally mental or spiritual. Materialism holds that all phenomena, whether mental, social, or emotional, are ultimately the product of material conditions. According to materialists, everything that exists can be explained by physical processes, whether it's the structure of the universe or the workings of the human mind. This viewpoint is grounded in the belief that the material world is all that there is, and that nothing exists beyond the physical realm. The emotional resonance of materialism stems from its ability to reduce the complexities of life to tangible, explainable phenomena. There is something deeply comforting, even empowering, in the idea that everything can be understood through science and reason. It removes the uncertainty that often comes with spiritual or supernatural explanations and presents the universe as a vast, interconnected system governed by predictable laws. This approach to reality invites us to seek knowledge, explore the natural world, and uncover the mysteries of existence through empirical observation and rational inquiry. Yet, materialism also evokes a sense of existential questioning as it challenges our notions of identity, purpose, and meaning. If everything we experience is simply a byproduct of physical processes, what happens to the concept of free will? Are our thoughts and desires truly ours, or are they merely the result of biochemical reactions in the brain? Materialism forces us to grapple with the idea that, in a universe governed solely by physical laws, the profound complexities of consciousness and existence might be reduced to something far more mechanistic and impersonal. This realization can stir feelings of disillusionment or even nihilism, as it strips away the mystery and spiritual dimensions that many seek in life. Ultimately, materialism forces us to confront the question of what it means to be human in a world where everything, including our most intimate experiences, is rooted in the material. Metaphysical naturalism. Metaphysical naturalism is the philosophical view that the natural world is all there is, and that everything that exists or occurs can be explained by natural laws and phenomena. It holds that there is no supernatural realm, no divine beings or forces beyond the observable universe. According to metaphysical naturalism, everything from the cosmos to the smallest biological processes follows a system of natural causes and effects, governed by the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology. In essence, the world we see, touch, and experience is the entirety of existence, and nothing exists beyond this natural world. The emotional power of metaphysical naturalism lies in its grounding of human existence in the tangible and observable universe. It offers a vision of the world that is rooted in reason, science, and empirical evidence, emphasizing the potential for understanding and mastery over the forces that shape our lives. There is a deep comfort in the idea that the universe operates on principles we can study, understand, and predict, giving us a sense of control over our environment and even our destinies. For many, this rational, naturalistic worldview offers a sense of clarity. If we understand the natural world fully, we can improve it, adapt to it, and thrive within it. However, metaphysical naturalism also evokes feelings of existential emptiness for others. If the universe operates solely on natural laws and there is no higher purpose or supernatural dimension, then what meaning can human life have? Without a divine plan or metaphysical realm, some may feel that life is ultimately insignificant in the grand scope of the cosmos. It can create an emotional tension between the scientific explanations that illuminate the world and the human desire for deeper meaning, connection, and purpose. While it provides an explanation for everything, it leaves unanswered questions about the emotional and spiritual dimensions of human existence. Metaphysical naturalism forces us to confront the limitations of human understanding, and the vast, impersonal universe in which we exist. It can be both a source of intellectual empowerment and existential disquiet, as it challenges the comfort of belief in the supernatural while offering a rigorous framework for understanding the world as it is. Ultimately, it asks us to find meaning not in divine explanations, but in the natural world itself, and in our ability to understand and make sense of it. Mind-body problem. The mind-body problem is one of the oldest and most perplexing issues in philosophy, concerned with understanding the relationship between the mind, our thoughts, emotions, and consciousness, and the body, the physical substance that makes up our biological being. At its heart, the problem asks, how can something as intangible as thought, experience, or consciousness arise from a physical body? How do mental states, like beliefs, desires, and feelings, relate to the brain's physical processes, like the firing of neurons or the release of chemicals? The mind-body problem forces us to confront the deepest questions about human nature and existence. What are we made of? Are we purely physical beings, or is there something more to our consciousness that transcends the body? The emotional force of the mind-body problem lies in the way it challenges our very sense of self. If the mind is simply a product of the brain, are we just our bodies, vulnerable and finite, with no deeper essence? Or is there something more, an immaterial soul or consciousness that gives us meaning beyond our physical existence? For centuries, thinkers have offered various answers, from dualism, which argues that the mind and body are separate substances, famously proposed by René Descartes, to materialism, which asserts that mental states are entirely the result of physical processes in the brain. Other views, like functionalism, suggest that mental states are defined by their roles or functions rather than their underlying physical composition. What makes this problem particularly emotionally stirring is its profound implications for identity, free will, and our understanding of life and death. If our consciousness is simply the result of physical processes, does this mean we are ultimately nothing more than machines? Or if there's something non-physical about the mind, what happens to us when our bodies cease to function? The mind-body problem confronts us with the uncertainty of who we really are, shaking our assumptions about personal identity and our place in the universe. As science continues to probe the mysteries of the brain and consciousness, the mind-body problem remains at the frontier of philosophical inquiry, offering no easy answers but sparking a deep, ongoing reflection about what it means to be human. Modernity. Modernity is a term that captures the profound transformation in human society, culture, and thought that began in the late 17th century and has continued into the present day. It marks the shift from traditional agrarian societies to industrial, capitalist ones, and it is deeply intertwined with the rise of science, reason, and individualism. Modernity brought about dramatic changes in how we understand the world, ourselves, and our place in the universe. It ushered in a new age of progress, technological innovation, and urbanization, while simultaneously challenging established social, religious, and political structures. For many, modernity is synonymous with the idea of advancement, the belief that through reason, science, and human agency, we can create a better world. However, modernity is not without its emotional complexities. On one hand, it promises the freedom to shape our own destinies, to break free from tradition and embrace individual autonomy. It encourages the pursuit of knowledge, the exploration of new frontiers, and the belief that humanity can improve its condition through innovation and critical thinking. On the other hand, modernity also brings with it a sense of alienation, disconnection, and fragmentation. The very forces that promise progress often led to the loss of community, identity, and meaning. The rapid pace of technological change can leave people feeling overwhelmed, powerless, and disconnected from the simpler, more intimate aspects of life. The emotional resonance of modernity lies in its simultaneous promise and peril. It offers hope for a future shaped by human ingenuity, but it also confronts us with the existential cost of this progress, the loss of tradition, the erosion of the sacred, and the disquieting realization that, for all our advancements, we still grapple with fundamental human questions about purpose, belonging, and the meaning of life. Modernity, in its quest for progress, forces us to confront the tension between the promise of control and the uncertainty of an ever-changing world. It challenges us to ask whether, in our race toward the future, we have lost touch with the very things that make life worth living. Moral relativism. Moral relativism is the view that moral judgments and ethical principles are not universal or absolute, but are instead shaped by cultural, societal, or individual perspectives. According to this philosophy, what is considered right or wrong can vary from one person or society to another, and there is no objective standard by which we can judge the moral value of actions across different contexts. This perspective challenges the traditional notion of moral absolutism, which asserts that there are universal moral truths that apply to all people at all times. In moral relativism, what might be deemed moral in one culture could be seen as immoral in another, and both views are valid within their respective frameworks. The emotional tension of moral relativism lies in the freedom it offers, but also the discomfort it creates. On one hand, it liberates individuals from rigid, dogmatic moral systems, acknowledging the diversity of human experience and the complexity of different cultural contexts. It allows for a more open-minded, tolerant approach to moral differences, encouraging empathy for people with differing beliefs and practices. In this way, it can promote a more inclusive worldview, one that recognizes the legitimacy of a variety of moral perspectives. Yet, this same flexibility can also be unsettling. If there is no absolute moral truth, how do we navigate moral conflicts, especially in cases where actions like violence or injustice are involved? How do we make ethical judgments when one person's truth could clash violently with another's? The emotional burden of moral relativism is the challenge it presents to our sense of certainty and justice. Without universal standards, we are left to constantly negotiate what is right, and that can lead to moral ambiguity, where even our most deeply held beliefs may be called into question. The discomfort of relativism lies in its destabilizing effect, forcing us to reconsider the very foundations of morality itself. Moral realism. Moral realism is the philosophical view that moral facts and values exist independently of human beliefs or feelings, much like physical objects in the world. According to moral realism, statements about what is morally right or wrong, good or bad, are not mere expressions of individual opinions or cultural norms, but objective truths that can be discovered and known. In other words, moral realism asserts that there are real moral facts about the world, facts that are true regardless of whether we recognize them or not. For example, the idea that murder is wrong is not just a social convention or a subjective opinion, but an objective moral truth that holds universally, independent of individual or cultural perspectives. The emotional intensity of moral realism comes from its promise of moral clarity. In a world where ethical dilemmas often seem subjective, ambiguous, or influenced by personal bias, moral realism offers the comfort of absolute moral truths. It suggests that even in a chaotic and complex world, there is a way to determine what is right and wrong beyond mere opinion or interpretation. For those who embrace moral realism, it provides a sense of moral stability and guidance. The idea that there are objective moral standards offers a foundation upon which to base decisions, laws, and societal norms, helping to maintain a sense of justice and fairness. However, moral realism also raises profound questions and challenges. If moral facts exist independently of human beliefs, how do we come to know them? And who decides what constitutes these objective truths? The emotional friction of moral realism lies in the tension between its promise of moral objectivity and the complexities of human experience. People often disagree about moral issues, and these disagreements can feel deeply personal. The idea that there are objective moral truths can be both comforting and unsettling, as it forces us to confront difficult questions about authority, interpretation, and the nature of ethics. In a world filled with diverse cultures, perspectives, and moral systems, moral realism can sometimes feel like a call for moral universality in a deeply pluralistic society. It challenges us to reflect on whether we can ever truly know objective moral truths, or whether our moral understanding will always be shaped by human experience, culture, and emotion. Despite its challenges, moral realism provides a powerful framework for thinking about ethics, one that insists on the existence of a moral reality beyond the subjective, offering both clarity and a path toward moral progress. Multiculturalism. Multiculturalism is the recognition and celebration of the diverse cultures that exist within a society. It promotes the idea that different cultural groups should not only coexist, but should also be valued for their unique contributions to the social, political, and economic fabric of a nation. Rather than insisting on cultural assimilation or the dominance of a singular national identity, multiculturalism encourages the flourishing of diverse traditions, languages, beliefs, and practices. It challenges the notion of a homogeneous culture and, instead, seeks to foster an environment where cultural diversity is seen as a strength that enriches the community as a whole. The emotional weight of multiculturalism lies in its promise of inclusivity and recognition. For marginalized or minority groups, multiculturalism offers a platform for their voices, histories, and identities to be acknowledged and respected. It creates a sense of belonging where people can celebrate their heritage without the fear of being erased or forced to conform. For individuals from dominant cultural backgrounds, multiculturalism invites a deeper appreciation of differences and an opportunity to learn from the richness that other cultures bring to society. However, multiculturalism also stirs intense debates and emotions. Critics argue that it can lead to division and fragmentation, creating separate bubbles where people are not integrated into a shared national identity. They worry that focusing too much on cultural differences might erode the sense of unity and common purpose. Supporters, on the other hand, argue that multiculturalism promotes tolerance, understanding, and social justice, creating a more dynamic and compassionate society where differences are celebrated, not suppressed. The emotional tension around multiculturalism lies in this balancing act, striving for unity while embracing diversity. It forces us to grapple with difficult questions about identity, belonging, and what it means to live together in a complex, globalized world. Mysticism. Mysticism is the pursuit of direct, personal experience with the divine or the ultimate reality, transcending the limits of reason, logic, and everyday perception. It involves seeking a profound, often ineffable connection to something greater than oneself, whether that be God, nature, the cosmos, or an inner spiritual truth. Mysticism is not about abstract doctrine or intellectual study, but about direct experience, a deep, transformative encounter with the divine or the mysterious essence of existence itself. Mystics often describe their experiences as beyond words, where language fails to capture the intensity and depth of what is felt in those sacred moments. The mystical experience is typically characterized by feelings of unity, transcendence, and an overwhelming sense of the interconnectedness of all things. The emotional depth of mysticism lies in its ability to break through the ordinary constraints of human experience and offer a taste of the infinite. For those who have experienced it, mysticism can be life-altering, as it often dissolves the boundaries between self and other, between the individual and the universe. This sense of unity brings with it a profound sense of peace, clarity, and understanding that transcends the mundane concerns of daily life. In moments of mystical revelation, individuals often feel a deep connection to something far beyond the individual ego, a realization of a divine presence or universal energy that pervades everything. However, mysticism is also fraught with ambiguity and mystery. Its very nature resists clear definition or objective analysis. The mystical experience can be deeply personal and elusive, often leading to both joy and confusion. It challenges conventional ways of knowing and relating to the world, offering a sense of insight and revelation that cannot be easily communicated or shared. For some, this can be a deeply unsettling realization, as it points to a reality beyond reason and measurement. Yet, for others, mysticism is a powerful and sacred path to understanding the true nature of existence, a reminder that there are mysteries far beyond the reach of the intellect, waiting to be experienced, not explained. Narrativity. Narrativity is the concept that suggests that human experience is inherently shaped and understood through stories. It is the idea that we make sense of the world, ourselves, and our relationships by constructing narratives, whether spoken, written, or internal. These narratives allow us to weave together events, actions, and experiences into a coherent sequence that holds meaning and significance. Narrativity touches on the essential way in which we understand our identity, our place in the world, and the actions we take. Whether we are reflecting on our past, imagining our future, or interpreting the lives of others, we are constantly engaged in the act of storytelling. These stories help us make sense of chaos, imbuing our experiences with purpose, continuity, and emotional resonance. The emotional power of narrativity is immense, as it gives us a sense of control over our lives. In a world that can often seem random or fragmented, the process of creating a narrative allows us to bring order and understanding to our experiences. By framing our lives as a story, we can see ourselves as the protagonist, facing challenges, making decisions, and growing over time. This narrative construction helps us cope with hardship, find meaning in suffering, and celebrate moments of triumph. It connects us to others by sharing common stories, whether they are personal anecdotes or collective histories. Yet narrativity also exposes the complexity of self-identity. Stories can be both empowering and limiting. The narratives we tell about ourselves can shape how we see the world, but they can also restrict us, trapping us in rigid roles or expectations. The discomfort of narrativity often arises when we confront the inconsistencies or contradictions within the stories we tell. Who are we really when we strip away the narratives we've constructed for ourselves? What happens when the stories we believe about our past no longer align with our present reality? Narrativity invites us to explore these questions, revealing the tension between the stories we tell and the truth that lies beneath. Naturalism. Naturalism is the philosophical viewpoint that everything arises from natural causes and laws, rejecting the supernatural or divine as explanations for the workings of the world. It asserts that all phenomena, including human beings, society, and the universe at large, are part of a natural order governed by laws of science. Under naturalism, everything from the behavior of atoms to the complexities of human consciousness is understood through natural processes, be it physics, biology, chemistry, or evolutionary theory. Naturalism does not imply a mere acceptance of the status quo. Rather, it emphasizes that the universe, though complex and mysterious, operates within a framework that we can come to understand through observation, reason, and scientific investigation. The emotional allure of naturalism lies in its grounding of human existence in the observable and knowable world. It provides a sense of comfort and control, encouraging the belief that through knowledge and scientific inquiry, we can uncover the truths of the universe and improve our lives. There is a profound sense of empowerment in the idea that the mysteries of life, from the origins of the cosmos to the depths of the human mind, are not beyond our grasp. Naturalism gives us a framework for exploring life without relying on divine intervention or speculative metaphysical entities, allowing us to view ourselves as part of a grand, interconnected web of life, subject to the same natural laws that govern the universe. However, the emotional challenge of naturalism is the existential void it can create for some. If everything is governed by natural laws, and if there is no divine purpose or supernatural dimension to life, it can lead to a sense of meaninglessness or insignificance. The realization that life and existence are mere products of natural process can feel stark and cold, stripping away the comforting belief in a higher purpose or cosmic meaning. For many, naturalism raises difficult questions about human agency, free will, and the nature of consciousness itself. If we are simply the result of natural processes, how do we reconcile our sense of individuality and moral responsibility with the deterministic forces of biology and physics? Despite these challenges, naturalism offers a powerful lens for understanding the world, one that is rooted in empirical evidence, reason, and the idea that through exploration and knowledge we can uncover the truths of existence. While it may leave unanswered questions about life's deeper purpose, it also provides a reliable, systematic way of engaging with the universe, a way that empowers humanity to seek meaning through understanding rather than through belief in the supernatural. Naturalism, in its most profound sense, asks us to find meaning not in the unknown or the divine, but in the very fabric of nature itself, urging us to appreciate the wonder of the world we can observe and explore. Neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is a political and economic ideology that emphasizes the power of free markets, minimal government intervention, and individual responsibility. Rooted in classical liberal economic theory, neoliberalism advocates for policies that prioritize deregulation, privatization, and the reduction of public spending in favor of market-driven solutions. In essence, it argues that the most efficient way to allocate resources, drive innovation, and improve society is by allowing market forces to operate freely, with as little interference as possible from the state. Neoliberalism suggests that economic success and personal freedom are best achieved when individuals and businesses are left to their own devices, rather than relying on government regulation or social welfare systems. The emotional impact of neoliberalism comes from its deep influence on how we understand success, equality, and social well-being. Neoliberalism encourages a worldview in which individual effort is seen as the primary means of achieving prosperity, leading to the glorification of self-reliance and competition. At its core, neoliberalism presents an image of society where the government's role is minimized and individuals are responsible for their own fate. This philosophy can evoke a sense of empowerment, urging people to believe that their economic and social mobility is determined by their own choices and hard work. However, the ideology also stirs significant emotional and social tension. Critics argue that neoliberalism exacerbates inequality as it favors the wealthy and corporations by reducing taxes and regulation while leaving vulnerable populations to fend for themselves. The emphasis on market efficiency often comes at the expense of social services, leading to cuts in healthcare, education, and social safety nets. For many, this creates a sense of insecurity and social fragmentation as wealth and resources become increasingly concentrated in the hands of a few, while the majority face growing economic hardships. Neoliberalism forces society to confront uncomfortable questions about the fairness of the system and whether true freedom can exist in a world where economic power is so unevenly distributed. This creates a profound emotional struggle between the ideals of personal freedom and the realities of social and economic inequality. Nihilism. Nihilism is the philosophical belief that life is devoid of inherent meaning, purpose, or value. At its core, nihilism challenges the very foundations upon which traditional beliefs about morality, existence, and knowledge are built. In a world governed by nihilism, there are no absolute truths, no intrinsic meaning in human life, and no moral or ethical standards that transcend human creation. The nihilist sees the universe as indifferent to human desires, struggles, and aspirations, offering no inherent guidance or higher purpose. This can be a deeply disorienting and emotional realization as it confronts us with the unsettling prospect that everything we value, whether love, success, or personal achievement, ultimately lacks universal significance. What makes nihilism so emotionally triggering is its stark confrontation with the very essence of our human experience. It forces us to ask, if nothing truly matters, if there is no greater purpose, why do we bother? This question can lead to feelings of emptiness, disillusionment, and despair, especially when we face the weight of existence without the comforting cushion of meaning or direction. For many, nihilism represents a profound crisis of identity, an existential void that casts doubt on everything from personal relationships to societal norms. In a nihilistic framework, even the pursuit of happiness or personal fulfillment seems ultimately futile, as it is disconnected from any larger cosmic plan or deeper significance. However, nihilism is not merely a philosophy of despair. It also opens the door to radical freedom and personal liberation. If life has no inherent meaning, then we are free to create our own meaning, to shape our existence according to our desires and values. This sense of freedom can be both liberating and terrifying. The realization that we are the authors of our own lives can offer a new sense of empowerment, even as it challenges us to confront the raw, unmediated reality of existence. Nihilism forces us to accept the absence of preordained meaning, and in doing so, it compels us to create meaning from within, shaping our own paths in a universe that offers no predetermined answers. Objectivism. Objectivism is a philosophical system developed by Ayn Rand, centered on the belief in objective reality and the pursuit of self-interest as the guiding moral principle. At its core, objectivism asserts that reality exists independently of consciousness and that human beings must perceive it through reason. The philosophy rejects any form of mysticism or collectivism, advocating instead for individualism, personal responsibility, and rational self-interest. In objectivism, the highest moral purpose of life is the pursuit of one's own happiness, achieved through the rational pursuit of one's values and goals. It upholds that the individual has the right to live for their own sake, not as a sacrifice to others or to the collective. The emotional appeal of objectivism is found in its celebration of individual autonomy and self-determination. It empowers people to take control of their lives, pursue their dreams, and live according to their values without being beholden to the needs or demands of others. Objectivism challenges the often sacrificial morality of traditional ethical systems, offering an alternative where self-interest is not seen as selfish, but as an essential part of thriving in a rational world. It offers a vision of a world where each individual is free to pursue their own goals and values without guilt or compromise. However, the emotional tension in objectivism arises from its stark contrast with more altruistic moral systems. While it extols self-reliance and individualism, it can appear cold and uncompromising in its dismissal of the importance of community, sacrifice, or collective well-being. Objectivism can lead to feelings of isolation or even moral conflict, as it asks individuals to prioritize their own happiness above the needs or interests of others. It raises difficult questions about the balance between personal freedom and social responsibility, and about whether true happiness can ever be fully realized in isolation from others. The powerful challenge of objectivism lies in its call for individuals to rethink the nature of morality, selfhood, and human connection in a world that often emphasizes shared responsibility and empathy. Ontological argument. The ontological argument is a philosophical argument for the existence of God based purely on reason and the concept of God itself, without relying on empirical evidence or observations of the natural world. It begins with the premise that God is that than which nothing greater can be conceived, a being so perfect that it is inconceivable for anything greater to exist. The argument asserts that if we can conceive of such a perfect being in our minds, it must exist in reality as well, because existence in reality is a necessary attribute of perfection. If God existed only in the mind and not in reality, then something greater than God could be conceived, something that exists both in the mind and in reality. Therefore, the ontological argument concludes God must exist both in the mind and in reality. The emotional power of the ontological argument lies in its profound simplicity and the idea that logic and reason alone can prove the existence of something as grand and transcendent as God. It plays with the boundaries of human understanding, suggesting that we do not need external evidence to confirm God's existence, but can instead rely on the very concept of God within our minds. For many, this argument stirs a deep sense of awe at the possibility of discovering divine truths through thought alone, emphasizing the power of human reason to grasp the infinite. Yet, the ontological argument also provokes intense debate and skepticism. Its reliance on abstract reasoning, detached from physical reality, makes it hard for many to accept. Critics argue that existence is not a predicate or quality that can be added to a concept. Merely defining something as existing doesn't make it so. The emotional tension this generates is significant, as it forces us to confront the limitations of logic in grasping metaphysical truths. The ontological argument challenges our perception of reality, asking us to question whether reason alone can bridge the gap between the abstract and the real. At its core, the ontological argument offers a glimpse into a philosophical and theological journey that ventures beyond the observable world, seeking to connect the human mind to the divine through pure thought. It invites us to explore the limits of logic and the nature of existence, pushing the boundaries of what is possible to prove or know, and leaving us to grapple with the mysteries of the divine and the human capacity for rational thought. Phenomenology. Phenomenology is a philosophical method that seeks to understand human experience by examining the way we perceive and interpret the world around us. At its core, phenomenology is concerned with the lived experience, how things appear to us in our consciousness before any interpretation or analysis. Founded by Edmund Husserl and further developed by thinkers like Martin Heidegger and Maurice Merleau-Ponty, phenomenology aims to get to the essence of human experience by focusing on the subjective, first-person perspective. Rather than assuming an objective, detached reality, phenomenology argues that we must start with our own perceptions, sensations, and intuitions to understand the world in a meaningful way. The emotional depth of phenomenology lies in its ability to open up the richness of our experiences, urging us to slow down and really feel what it means to be alive in the world. When we engage with phenomenology, we are asked to reflect on the very nature of perception, how colors, sounds, textures, and emotions reveal themselves to us in the act of experiencing. It forces us to confront the idea that our consciousness is not just a passive observer, but an active participant in shaping the way we understand reality. This realization can be both liberating and unsettling, as it challenges the notion of a fixed objective world beyond our perceptions and invites us into a deeper, more intimate relationship with our surroundings. What makes phenomenology so emotionally triggering is its profound exploration of subjectivity. It places the individual at the center of meaning-making, asking us to consider how we experience time, space, and existence. For Heidegger, phenomenology was about understanding being itself, how we relate to the world and others in our daily existence. The recognition that our world is constructed through our perceptions, our lived experiences, forces us to acknowledge the complexity and fluidity of reality and to accept that we can never fully separate ourselves from the world we inhabit. This approach opens up an existential dialogue about how we shape our lives through the meaning we create, giving us the power to define our existence, even as we remain bound to our subjective experiences. Post-Structuralism. Post-Structuralism is a philosophical and literary theory that emerged as a reaction against the rigid, systematic structures of earlier schools of thought, particularly structuralism. It challenges the idea that meaning can be fixed, stable, or universally understood, arguing instead that meaning is fluid, subjective, and constantly in flux. At its core, post-structuralism asserts that language is not a transparent medium that directly reflects reality, but rather a complex, shifting system that constructs and shapes our understanding of the world. It focuses on the idea that meaning is produced through the relationships between words, concepts, and cultural contexts, and that this meaning can never be fully captured or determined. For post-structuralists, the search for a singular absolute truth is a fruitless endeavor because meaning is always contingent, shifting, and open to interpretation. The emotional impact of post-structuralism lies in its unsettling nature. It forces us to confront the fact that the structures we rely on, language, culture, and even identity, are not as solid or dependable as we once believed. By destabilizing the idea of fixed meaning, post-structuralism calls into question everything from historical narratives to personal identity. Who we are, what we believe, and how we understand the world are not fixed, but are continuously constructed and reconstructed by language, power, and social forces. This can evoke feelings of disorientation as it challenges the comforting belief that there is a clear, unchanging reality to grasp hold of. Yet, in its embrace of uncertainty, post-structuralism also offers a profound sense of freedom. It frees us from the constraints of absolute meanings, opening the door to multiple interpretations and perspectives. This perspective encourages a deeper awareness of how power dynamics, cultural context, and personal experience shape the way we perceive the world. It invites us to question authority, challenge traditional narratives, and explore the complex layers of meaning that exist beneath the surface of our everyday lives. While it may unsettle our sense of certainty, post-structuralism also opens up a rich, dynamic field of possibilities where meaning is not something we find, but something we create and negotiate continuously. Pragmatism. Pragmatism is a philosophical approach that emphasizes practical consequences and real-world applications as the basis for determining the truth and value of ideas, beliefs, and actions. Unlike other philosophies that focus on abstract principles or metaphysical questions, pragmatism is rooted in the idea that the meaning and truth of a concept are determined by its practical effects and usefulness in everyday life. Originating in the late 19th century with philosophers like Charles Sanders Peirce, William James, and John Dewey, pragmatism suggests that our thoughts, beliefs, and actions should be judged not by their adherence to a fixed set of truths, but by how effectively they help us navigate and solve problems in the world. The emotional appeal of pragmatism lies in its grounded, no-nonsense approach to life. It speaks to the everyday struggles we face and the need for solutions that work in practice, not just in theory. Pragmatism encourages us to focus on what's useful, adaptable, and effective, rather than getting lost in abstract debates. It offers freedom from rigid ideologies, inviting individuals to adjust their beliefs based on what works in real-world situations. This adaptability provides a sense of empowerment, rather than being bound by a set of unchanging doctrines. Pragmatism allows us to evolve and grow as we encounter new challenges. Yet, pragmatism can also evoke discomfort, as it requires us to question the deeper meanings of our beliefs and values. What happens to ideals, principles, or truths that can't be measured by practical outcomes? In a world increasingly driven by pragmatism, we are forced to confront the limits of idealism and the tension between what works and what is ethically or philosophically pure. Pragmatism challenges us to find balance between theory and practice and the messy reality of living out our beliefs. Rationalism. Rationalism is a philosophical view that emphasizes reason as the primary source of knowledge rather than sensory experience or empirical observation. It holds that certain truths can be known independently of experience through the use of innate ideas or logical deduction. Rationalists believe that the mind possesses an inherent ability to grasp fundamental principles of reality, such as mathematical truths or moral laws, through intellect alone. Prominent rationalists such as René Descartes, Baruch Spinoza, and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz argued that reason is the most reliable guide to knowledge and that the material world can be understood through the application of logical, intellectual processes. The emotional appeal of rationalism lies in its promise of certainty and clarity. In a world full of ambiguity and sensory deception, rationalism offers a comforting vision of objective truth, arrived at through logical reasoning and intellectual insight. The idea that reason can lead us to universal truths provides a sense of security and order in our understanding of the world. It allows us to feel in control of our knowledge, relying on our innate capacity for logic rather than the often unreliable data provided by the senses. However, rationalism can also create a sense of alienation or detachment from the world around us. It risks devaluing the richness of sensory experience, emotional intuition, and lived reality by placing ultimate trust in abstract intellectual processes. The tension arises when rationalism struggles to account for subjective experiences, feelings, and the nuances of human existence. In a purely rational world, how do we understand love, art, or morality, things that often defy strict logical categorization? Rationalism forces us to confront the limits of reason and the complexities of knowledge that cannot always be reduced to logical formulas. Reconstructivism. Reconstructivism is a philosophical and educational theory that focuses on the idea of reshaping or reconstructing society and its values through critical reflection, learning, and action. It proposes that instead of merely accepting the status quo or teaching pre-established knowledge, education and philosophy should engage individuals in actively questioning and reimagining the structures and systems that shape their lives. Reconstructivists argue that learning should be oriented not just toward acquiring facts, but toward addressing social injustices, environmental challenges, and global inequalities. The goal is to create a society that is more just, equitable, and aligned with human potential. The emotional power of Reconstructivism lies in its vision for change. It speaks to a deep, almost revolutionary desire to transform the world into something better by not only questioning the existing systems, but by actively working to reconstruct them. This philosophy acknowledges the need for growth and reform and challenges us to think critically about how we participate in the societal structures that influence our lives. It fosters a sense of agency, urging individuals to become active contributors to shaping their communities and the world around them, rather than passive recipients of inherited traditions and systems. However, Reconstructivism also carries an emotional burden, as it asks individuals to confront uncomfortable truths about the world, truths about power, inequality, and the limitations of current systems. The tension here lies in the challenge of balancing idealism with practicality. How do we reconstruct a broken society without facing resistance? And how do we create meaningful change when so many systems are entrenched in power? Reconstructivism demands that we continually reflect on our role in society and be willing to take risks for the sake of transformation, which can be both inspiring and overwhelming. Reductive physicalism. Reductive physicalism is a philosophical perspective that seeks to explain all phenomena, including mental states and consciousness, in terms of physical processes. According to this view, everything, from thoughts and emotions to consciousness itself, can ultimately be reduced to interactions among physical particles governed by the laws of physics. In its simplest form, reductive physicalism argues that all the complexities of the mind, including subjective experiences, are simply the result of biochemical and neural activities in the brain. This viewpoint dismisses the need for non-physical explanations of reality, asserting that the physical world is all there is and everything can be understood through the lens of science. The emotional weight of reductive physicalism comes from its attempt to provide a unified, scientific account of existence. It offers a sense of clarity, suggesting that everything, from the universe's grand design to our most intimate thoughts, is bound by the same physical rules. There's an undeniable power in the simplicity and directness of this worldview, offering a framework that leaves little room for ambiguity. It promises a future where every question, every mystery can be solved by understanding the physical mechanisms at play. However, reductive physicalism also evokes significant discomfort, especially when it comes to the subjective nature of human experience. If consciousness, thoughts, and emotions are purely physical processes, what happens to the richness of our inner lives? Are feelings of love, pain, or joy just biological reactions devoid of deeper meaning or significance? This philosophical reduction can feel unsettling as it strips away the mystery and the profound complexity of the human experience, challenging us to reconcile the personal and the physical in a world that seems increasingly mechanical. Reductive physicalism forces us to question whether we, as conscious beings, are truly just the sum of our parts or something more. Relationality. Relationality is the concept that emphasizes the interconnectedness of all things and the idea that meaning, identity, and reality are not found in isolation but are shaped through relationships. This philosophy posits that individuals, objects, and phenomena only gain significance through their relationships with others. In contrast to the traditional view of independent, self-contained entities, relationality asserts that everything exists in a state of constant interaction and mutual influence. From personal relationships to the connections between ideas, everything is defined and understood through its interactions within a web of relationships. This view has profound implications in fields such as social theory, metaphysics, and ethics, as it challenges the notion of the isolated individual or object. The emotional depth of relationality lies in its power to foster a sense of unity and belonging. It encourages us to recognize the profound influence of our relationships, whether with people, nature, or even abstract concepts, on shaping who we are. In this view, we are never solitary beings. Our identities, beliefs, and emotions are constantly in flux, shaped by the interactions we have with the world around us. This interconnectedness can be deeply comforting, as it suggests that our lives are part of something larger, more meaningful, and more intricate than we might have imagined. However, relationality also introduces emotional tension, as it forces us to acknowledge the responsibility we hold in our connections with others. It suggests that we are not independent agents, but are always influenced by the relationships we maintain. This can lead to a sense of vulnerability, as we are continually impacted by the people and systems around us, and the complex web of relationships may be difficult to navigate. In relationality, our actions, thoughts, and feelings are never isolated. They resonate throughout the interconnected world, creating both a sense of shared existence and a challenge in maintaining autonomy. Repressed memory. Repressed memory is a psychological concept that refers to the subconscious process by which traumatic memories are pushed out of conscious awareness. These memories, often linked to extreme stress, abuse, or psychological trauma, are not lost, but are instead buried in the unconscious mind, typically to protect the individual from overwhelming emotional pain. According to this theory, the mind suppresses memories that are too difficult to face, preventing them from entering conscious thought. In many cases, repressed memories are thought to resurface later in life, sometimes triggered by specific events, emotions, or therapies aimed at uncovering them. The emotional intensity of repressed memory stems from the unsettling idea that parts of our past remain hidden from us, influencing our behavior and emotional state without our conscious awareness. It speaks to the fragility of our mental defenses and the complexity of trauma. The notion that a person could be living with the emotional consequences of a past they cannot consciously recall creates an eerie feeling of vulnerability. Imagine confronting the possibility that your current emotional struggles or reactions might be the result of events buried deep within your mind, waiting to be unearthed. However, the concept also raises profound questions about memory, identity, and truth. How reliable is our recollection of the past if parts of it are hidden from us? What happens when repressed memories surface, sometimes in ways that feel distorted or overwhelming? The emotional discomfort of repressed memory lies in its ambiguity. While some argue that it offers a protective mechanism, others worry about its manipulation or misuse, especially in therapy. Repressed memories force us to grapple with the deep, unresolved pain of the past and the terrifying possibility that we may not fully understand our own history. Revisionism. Revisionism is the act of re-evaluating and reinterpreting historical events, theories, or ideologies in light of new evidence, perspectives, or changing social and political contexts. It challenges traditional narratives, asking whether accepted truths or historical accounts are incomplete, biased, or inaccurate. In political and historical contexts, revisionism often emerges when established perspectives on events or movements are questioned or updated to include voices, experiences, and viewpoints that were previously marginalized or overlooked. While revisionism can be a tool for uncovering forgotten or suppressed truths, it can also be controversial, as it may challenge long-held beliefs or power structures. The emotional force of revisionism lies in its capacity to unsettle deeply ingrained beliefs. When accepted historical facts or ideologies are questioned, it can provoke strong reactions, ranging from acceptance and enlightenment to denial and resistance. For some, revisionism represents a necessary step toward justice and understanding. allowing for a more complete and accurate portrayal of history. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths and to reassess the legacies of figures, movements, and events that were once seen as untouchable. The emotional charge of revisionism often comes from its ability to disrupt the stories we tell about ourselves and our societies, challenging the way we view our collective past. However, revisionism can also trigger defensiveness and skepticism. In questioning well-established narratives, it sometimes feels as if the very foundations of cultural identity, national pride, or ideological commitment are being undermined. The emotional tension of revisionism arises from this conflict. It can bring healing by providing a fuller, more inclusive understanding of the past, but it can also stir resentment by challenging cherished beliefs. The beauty of revisionism lies in its potential to expand our understanding, even as it forces us to confront the dissonance between the past we thought we knew and the new truths we are only beginning to uncover. Social contract theory. Social contract theory is a foundational concept in political philosophy that explores the legitimacy of governmental authority and the moral and political obligations of individuals within society. At its core, it suggests that the formation of societies and governments arises from a mutual agreement or contract between individuals who consent to give up certain freedoms in exchange for protection, order, and the benefits of living in a structured community. Philosophers like Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau each presented different versions of this theory, but all agree on the fundamental idea that society's rules and laws are not arbitrary, but the product of a collective agreement aimed at ensuring stability and mutual benefit. The emotional resonance of social contract theory lies in its exploration of human nature and the role of the individual within a larger social structure. It forces us to confront the delicate balance between individual freedom and collective responsibility. What do we owe to each other as members of a society? How far can we push the limits of our personal autonomy before it undermines the greater good? The theory also raises questions of justice and fairness. How do we ensure that the contract we enter into is just and that the laws and institutions created serve everyone equally? Yet, social contract theory often stirs discomfort as it brings us face to face with the limitations of freedom and the potential for exploitation. The idea of giving up personal liberties for security can feel restrictive, especially when we question who benefits from this contract and who is left out. Is the contract truly voluntary, or are we simply born into systems of power and control that we have no choice but to accept? These challenging questions make social contract theory both an intellectually invigorating and emotionally charged exploration of human society and governance. Social constructivism. Social constructivism is a theory in both psychology and philosophy that suggests knowledge and reality are not discovered, but rather constructed through social interactions and cultural processes. According to this view, the meaning we assign to the world around us, our beliefs, values, and even our perceptions of reality are shaped by the collective agreements and social practices within our communities. This perspective emphasizes that human beings do not passively absorb knowledge, but actively participate in constructing their understanding of the world through communication, shared experiences, and societal norms. The key idea is that our perception of reality is not objective, but is influenced by the language, culture, and social interactions that surround us. The emotional power of social constructivism lies in its ability to challenge the notion of an objective, unchanging reality. It suggests that the world is not a static entity, but a dynamic, ever-evolving construct that is shaped by human interactions. This view can be both liberating and unsettling. It can be liberating because it opens up possibilities for change. emphasizing that societal norms and values are not set in stone, but are malleable. It encourages individuals to question inherited beliefs and to see the potential for transformation through collective effort. On the other hand, it can also be uncomfortable as it forces us to recognize the limits of our own perspective and the extent to which our knowledge is influenced by the social environments we inhabit. The discomfort arises when we confront the reality that our understanding of truth may be fluid and relative, shaped by the cultural and social lenses through which we view the world. This raises difficult questions about objectivity and the authenticity of knowledge. Social constructivism asks us to reevaluate everything from personal identity to global issues, urging us to consider how deeply social influences shape our thoughts, actions, and understanding of truth. Social justice. Social justice is the pursuit of fairness, equality, and the protection of human rights within society. It seeks to address the disparities and injustices that exist in areas like wealth, education, employment, and legal rights, advocating for a society where all individuals, regardless of their background or circumstances, have access to the same opportunities. Social justice is not just about addressing issues like poverty or discrimination. It's about creating systems that recognize and combat structural inequalities that perpetuate social disadvantage. It calls for a reordering of societal structures to ensure that the needs of the most vulnerable are met and that the marginalized are given a fair chance at equality. The emotional depth of social justice lies in its moral urgency. It evokes powerful feelings of empathy, compassion, and solidarity for those who are oppressed or disenfranchised. The idea that people's basic rights, whether related to race, gender, sexuality, or socioeconomic status, should be protected, strikes at the core of our collective humanity. Social justice stirs in us the desire for a fairer world, one where individuals are not defined by the systems that seek to keep them down, but are given the tools and opportunities to thrive. The call for social justice can ignite a sense of moral duty, urging us to challenge the status quo and fight against inequities that affect millions. However, social justice also brings with it emotional tension. The pursuit of fairness can sometimes conflict with deeply held beliefs about individual freedom, merit, or the role of government. As we advocate for equality and inclusivity, we confront the difficult question of how to balance competing interests and values. Can we truly achieve equality without imposing limits or redistributing resources? These challenges create a sense of unease, but they also fuel the ongoing fight for a more just and equitable world. Social justice compels us to reflect on our own privileges, the structures we live within, and our responsibility to others. Social ontology. Social ontology is the study of the nature and existence of social entities, such as institutions, organizations, and collective identities, and how these entities exist, persist, and affect human behavior. It focuses on understanding the fundamental nature of social realities and how things like norms, power structures, and social roles are created and sustained. Unlike traditional ontology, which deals with the nature of individual objects or phenomena, social ontology delves into the social world's collective dimensions, how things come to exist through social agreement, recognition, and shared practices. It questions how social entities like governments or corporations can have real, tangible effects on our lives despite being abstract constructs. The emotional force of social ontology lies in its ability to reveal the often invisible structures that govern our lives. It brings awareness to the fact that much of what we take for granted, such as laws, moral norms, or societal expectations, are not natural or inevitable, but products of collective human agreement and action. This realization can be both liberating and unsettling. On one hand, social ontology encourages the possibility of social change by showing that our world is shaped by human-made systems, and thus those systems can be altered. On the other hand, it forces us to confront the power these social entities hold over us and the way they shape our lives, often without us fully recognizing or questioning them. The tension in social ontology arises from its challenge to the idea of individuality and autonomy. It asks us to acknowledge that our identities, actions, and even our desires are influenced by social realities beyond our control. This realization can feel overwhelming as it forces us to confront the complex web of social structures and relationships that shape who we are. Yet, social ontology also empowers us to see that, by understanding these structures, we can work to reshape them and create more just, equitable, and conscious social worlds. Structuralism. Structuralism is a theoretical approach that emerged in the early 20th century, particularly in the fields of anthropology, linguistics, and philosophy. It posits that human culture, language, and social systems are governed by underlying structures that shape and organize meaning. Rather than focusing on individual elements in isolation, structuralism seeks to uncover the larger systems and relationships that define and influence them. For example, in linguistics, Ferdinand de Saussure argued that meaning in language is created not by individual words, but by their relationship to each other within a structure of signs. Similarly, in anthropology, Claude Lévi-Strauss explored how myths and cultural practices are rooted in universal structures of thought. The emotional depth of structuralism lies in its challenge to our perception of reality. It forces us to reconsider the idea of human experience as something defined by personal autonomy and individuality. Instead, structuralism suggests that our thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors are not merely the result of personal choice or random events, but are shaped by deeper, often invisible structures. These structures are cultural, linguistic, or psychological forces that we may not even be aware of, yet they profoundly determine how we interpret the world. This can be both liberating and unsettling. Liberating because it reveals patterns and connections that help explain human behavior, but unsettling because it implies that much of what we take as personal or individual is actually determined by external forces beyond our control. At the same time, structuralism's focus on underlying systems can evoke a sense of alienation. If our experiences are shaped by these larger structures, what happens to individual agency or freedom? The tension between structure and agency is a key emotional conflict within structuralism, as it compels us to grapple with the idea that our thoughts and identities may not be as self-made or independent as we would like to believe. Subjectivity. Subjectivity is the philosophical concept that emphasizes the individual nature of experience, perception, and reality. It asserts that knowledge and truth are always filtered through the lens of personal experience, emotions, and cognitive processes. Unlike objectivity, which seeks to describe the world as it exists, independent of personal influence, subjectivity acknowledges that our understanding of the world is inherently shaped by our unique perspectives, biases, and emotions. In this view, each person's reality is different, shaped by their upbringing, culture, personal experiences, and even the physiological state of their body. Subjectivity is central to our understanding of consciousness, as it encapsulates the notion that each person's perception of the world is deeply personal and often inaccessible to others. The emotional significance of subjectivity is profound, as it places the individual at the center of their own experience. It acknowledges the richness of personal feelings, thoughts, and interpretations, recognizing that every person lives in a world that is uniquely theirs. This can be empowering, as it offers a sense of autonomy and ownership over one's worldview. It celebrates the nuances of human experience, offering validity to emotions and perceptions that might otherwise be dismissed as unimportant or irrational. However, subjectivity can also evoke discomfort and isolation. Because no two people share the exact same experiences or perceptions, it can be difficult to fully understand or connect with others. The awareness of subjectivity can create a sense of alienation as we come to terms with the fact that our inner world is uniquely ours, often separate from those around us. Yet, subjectivity also highlights the beauty of diversity in human experience. While it may create barriers to perfect understanding, it also opens the door to empathy as we recognize that others too navigate their lives through their own deeply personal lens. Ultimately, subjectivity asks us to embrace the complexities of the human condition, where reality is always filtered through the mind, making every individual's perception of the world both distinct and meaningful. Supervenience. Supervenience is a philosophical concept that describes the relationship between two sets of properties, where one set depends on the other, but the higher level properties cannot change without a corresponding change in the lower level ones. In simpler terms, supervenience suggests that if there is a change in the more complex or abstract properties, such as mental states or moral values, there must be a change in the underlying, more fundamental properties, like physical states or behaviors, while the lower level properties, such as neurobiological processes, determine the higher level ones, such as consciousness or emotions. They do not dictate them in a one-to-one way. Instead, the relationship is more nuanced, where higher level properties are supervenient on the lower level properties, meaning they arise from them but are not reducible to them. The emotional depth of supervenience lies in the profound implications it has for understanding human nature and experience. It offers a way to bridge the mind-body problem by suggesting that while mental phenomena may not be directly reducible to physical states, they still depend on them. For example, our feelings, thoughts, and consciousness cannot exist without the corresponding physical processes in the brain. This realization can feel both empowering and humbling. Empowering because it allows us to explore the complexities of consciousness while remaining grounded in the physical world, and humbling because it suggests that the very essence of who we are depends on a physical reality that we may never fully understand. Yet, the concept of supervenience can also evoke tension. If our mental states and ethical beliefs are so closely tied to physical states, what does that mean for our autonomy or responsibility? Do we have free will, or are our thoughts and decisions merely the result of underlying neural processes? Supervenience challenges us to reconsider the nature of consciousness, responsibility, and even morality, as it forces us to acknowledge that the higher aspects of our identity are, in a very real sense, dependent on something more fundamental: tautology. A tautology is a statement that is true by necessity or definition, often offering no real information beyond its own structure. In logical terms, a tautology is a formula or proposition that cannot be false under any interpretation, like saying it will either rain tomorrow or it will not rain tomorrow. This is a statement that, by its very nature, is always true, regardless of the external circumstances. Tautologies are often seen as redundant or self-evident because they do not provide new or useful insights about the world. In everyday language, tautologies tend to appear as circular statements that repeat the same idea in different words, like saying free gift or advance warning. The emotional appeal of tautology is subtle, yet it resonates with our search for certainty. When we encounter tautologies, they provide a sense of unshakable truth, no matter how trivial or redundant they may seem. They give us reassurance because they simplify complex ideas or choices by making them seemingly undeniable or inevitable. There's a certain comfort in the unquestionable certainty that a tautological statement provides, especially when navigating situations filled with ambiguity or doubt. However, the tension with tautology arises when we realize it contributes little to the process of genuine reasoning or understanding. While tautologies provide certainty, they also highlight the limits of logical reasoning when it comes to uncovering new insights or truths. They can feel empty, serving only to reinforce already established ideas without pushing forward any meaningful exploration. In this way, tautologies evoke both comfort in their unassailable truth and frustration in their inability to add real depth to a conversation or thought process. Temporal flow refers to the continuous, irreversible progression of time from past to present to future. It is the way in which we experience and understand the unfolding of events in our lives and the world around us. Time, as we perceive it, flows relentlessly forward, carrying everything along with it. This flow gives structure to our experiences, shaping how we understand change, memory, and anticipation. The concept of temporal flow speaks to the fact that no moment can ever be repeated, and the present is always fleeting, soon to become part of the past, while the future remains an uncertain and ungraspable horizon. The emotional impact of temporal flow is profound, as it touches on the most fundamental aspects of human existence, our awareness of mortality, the passage of time, and the inevitability of change. We live our lives within this constant, unyielding current, trying to make sense of fleeting moments while confronting the fact that time continues without pause. This awareness often evokes a sense of urgency or anxiety. We are acutely aware that the moments we experience right now will soon be gone, and that the future, though unknown, is always just out of reach. The pressure to make the most of our time can lead to feelings of existential tension as we grapple with the balance between living in the present and preparing for an uncertain future. Yet, temporal flow also holds beauty in its transience. It invites us to appreciate the ephemeral nature of life, to find meaning in the fleeting moments that make up our experiences. Time's flow reminds us of the preciousness of the present, urging us to embrace change, growth, and the inevitability of both endings and new beginnings. This fluidity of time is at once unsettling and awe-inspiring, forcing us to confront our place in the vast, ever-moving river of existence. The sublime. The sublime is a concept that refers to experiences that transcend ordinary beauty, evoking a mixture of awe, wonder, and sometimes even fear, rooted in philosophical and aesthetic discourse, particularly in the writings of Edmund Burke and Immanuel Kant. The sublime captures moments where nature, art, or human achievement seem so vast, powerful, or incomprehensible that they provoke an overwhelming emotional response. It is not just beauty, but an awe that stirs the deepest corners of the human soul, often confronting us with both the majesty and the terror of the world. The sublime often emerges when we encounter something beyond our understanding, something so grand or infinite that it forces us to recognize our own limitations. The emotional impact of the sublime is immense. It takes us to the edge of our understanding, pushing us beyond the confines of ordinary experience. Whether it's the sight of a vast, stormy ocean, the immensity of a mountain range, or the haunting beauty of a work of art, the sublime stirs a deep, visceral reaction. It simultaneously exhilarates and humbles as we are confronted with forces or phenomena that dwarf our sense of self. This duality, pleasure and terror, creates an experience that can feel both sublime and unsettling, leaving us in awe of the vastness of the world and the fleetingness of our own existence. Yet, The sublime also evokes a kind of paradox. While it evokes intense emotions, it also reveals the limits of human comprehension. It reminds us that there are forces beyond our control, ideas beyond our grasp, and beauty beyond our full understanding. In embracing the sublime, we are forced to reconcile our own smallness with the immense, often incomprehensible beauty of the universe, leading us to reflect on our place within it. The other. The other is a philosophical and social concept that explores how individuals or groups define themselves in opposition to those they perceive as different, often marginalized, excluded, or subjugated. It refers to the construction of identity by delineating boundaries between us and them, where the other is often characterized as strange, inferior, or less human. This concept is central to many philosophical, psychological, and sociological theories, particularly in the works of figures like Simone de Beauvoir, who explored how women have been historically positioned as the other in relation to men, and Emmanuel Levinas, who considered the ethical implications of encountering the other. The idea is rooted in the notion that identity is formed through differentiation and that our understanding of ourselves is shaped by the recognition of what we are not. The emotional weight of the concept of the other comes from its profound impact on human experience and relationships. It forces us to confront the painful and often violent consequences of exclusion and the dehumanization of those we see as different. At the heart of this is the reality that by creating others, societies can justify discrimination, oppression, and violence, whether in the context of race, gender, sexuality, or cultural differences. The other represents the emotional and psychological distance we create in order to maintain power, control, or comfort. It highlights the deep divisions in society and the ways in which those who are othered are often denied recognition, rights, or voice. However, the concept of the other also challenges us to rethink our relationships with those different from ourselves. It calls for an examination of our biases, assumptions, and the ways in which we construct identities based on differences. The discomfort lies in recognizing that we are complicit in perpetuating these divisions and that the process of othering not only harms those who are excluded, but also diminishes our own humanity. Ultimately, the other forces us to confront the alienation and estrangement inherent in societal structures, urging us to break down the walls we've built between ourselves and those who seem different, and to seek empathy, understanding, and equality. The unconscious. The unconscious refers to the part of the mind that houses thoughts, memories, desires, and feelings that are not currently in conscious awareness, but still influence our behaviors, decisions, and perceptions. Sigmund Freud famously brought the concept of the unconscious to the forefront of modern psychology, arguing that repressed desires and unresolved conflicts from our past shape much of our adult behavior, even though we may not be aware of them. The unconscious is not just a reservoir of forgotten memories, but an active, dynamic force that governs much of our emotional and psychological life, from the dreams we have at night to the subtle ways we react to certain people or situations. The emotional depth of the unconscious lies in its mysterious nature. It represents the hidden, often uncontrollable parts of ourselves that we are reluctant to confront. The realization that much of our behavior is driven by forces we cannot fully understand or control can be both unsettling and liberating. The unconscious challenges the notion of the self as a fully conscious, rational being, urging us to question how much of our identity and actions are truly within our control. This realization can stir feelings of vulnerability, as it forces us to reckon with the possibility that we may not fully understand ourselves, and that there are parts of our psyche operating beyond our awareness. Yet, the unconscious also offers a rich source of insight. Through self-reflection, dream analysis, and therapy, we can begin to uncover the hidden influences that shape our thoughts and actions. The emotional tension of the unconscious is in its dual nature. It is both a source of psychological conflict and a path to greater self-awareness. Confronting the unconscious can be an uncomfortable journey, but it is also one that holds the potential for profound personal growth and understanding. Transcendence. Transcendence refers to the experience or concept of going beyond ordinary limits, surpassing the material world, or achieving a higher state of being. It is often tied to spiritual or philosophical realms, where an individual seeks to rise above the mundane aspects of existence and connect with something greater, whether it be the divine, a universal truth, or a sense of ultimate reality. The notion of transcendence suggests that there are dimensions to human experience that lie beyond the physical or empirical world, which can only be understood or realized through deep introspection, spiritual awakening, or philosophical contemplation. The emotional pull of transcendence is undeniable, as it speaks to our yearning for something greater than ourselves. It connects with our deepest desires for meaning, purpose, and fulfillment in a world that can often feel limited by the constraints of time, space, and physicality. The idea of transcending the everyday, of breaking free from the limitations of the self or the material world, resonates with the human need to find connection with something beyond the fleeting and the temporary. Transcendence provides a sense of hope and possibility, suggesting that there is a higher plane of existence, a deeper truth, or a more profound experience waiting to be discovered. However, transcendence also evokes a sense of tension, as it requires a departure from the known world and the familiar. The journey towards transcendence often feels daunting and uncertain, as it challenges the conventional ways of understanding reality and selfhood. What happens when the quest for transcendence leads to a sense of alienation, or when it appears out of reach? The emotional complexity of transcendence lies in its promise of something beyond, while simultaneously confronting us with the difficulty and uncertainty of reaching that higher state. Truth value. Truth value is a concept in philosophy, particularly in the field of logic, that refers to the determination of whether a statement is true or false. It is the measure by which we evaluate the validity or correctness of propositions, beliefs, and assertions in both logical and everyday discourse. In simpler terms, the truth value of a statement tells us whether the statement aligns with reality. For instance, the statement, "The sky is blue," has a truth value of true under typical conditions, whereas "the sky is green" would be false. The idea of truth value is essential to rational discourse, allowing us to distinguish between accurate representations of the world and those that are false or misleading. The emotional force of truth value arises from its role in shaping how we understand reality. When we consider truth, we are not merely engaging with abstract concepts. We are grappling with the very foundation of what it means to know and understand the world. Truth value helps us navigate the complexity of existence, guiding us toward what is real, what is possible, and what is constructed. It carries the weight of clarity and certainty, offering a measure by which we can trust our beliefs and decisions. This is particularly significant in times of uncertainty, where determining what is true can become emotionally charged, whether in personal relationships, politics, or larger societal issues. However, truth value also invites discomfort when we face the limits of our own understanding. What happens when something we believe to be true is revealed as false? How do we navigate the complexities of subjective truths or conflicting perspectives, where truth value becomes blurred? The tension here lies in the realization that truth is not always straightforward. It can be elusive, contingent, or influenced by context. This complexity challenges our desire for clear answers and forces us to confront the nuanced, sometimes uncomfortable nature of truth itself. Utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is an ethical theory that advocates for the maximization of overall happiness and well-being, often summarized by the principle, the greatest good for the greatest number. Founded by philosophers like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, utilitarianism posits that the moral worth of an action is determined by its consequences, specifically how much it contributes to the happiness or pleasure of those affected. In this view, actions that produce the most positive outcomes, measured in terms of happiness, pleasure, or well-being, are considered the most ethical. This theory promotes a pragmatic, outcome-based approach to decision-making, encouraging individuals to evaluate the broader impact of their actions on society as a whole. The emotional pull of utilitarianism lies in its simplicity and its promise of practical morality. It offers a clear and measurable way to judge the morality of decisions, providing a framework that transcends individual or cultural biases. The notion that ethical choices should prioritize the collective good resonates with our innate desire for fairness, justice, and social harmony. It encourages us to think beyond personal interests and to consider how our actions affect others, fostering a sense of responsibility toward the welfare of society. However, utilitarianism also raises uncomfortable dilemmas. Its focus on the greatest good often leads to morally difficult decisions, such as sacrificing the well-being of a few for the benefit of many. This can be emotionally challenging, as it demands we weigh human lives and happiness in ways that feel cold and utilitarian. Critics argue that utilitarianism can justify harm or exploitation if the net outcome benefits a larger group. The tension in utilitarianism lies in balancing individual rights with collective happiness, and the emotional discomfort it stirs forces us to confront the complexities of moral decision-making in a world where the greatest good isn't always clear or easy to achieve.